is one of the most influential leaders in the world and shouldn't stay silent on this.
If he sat on the right side of history, encouraged his brother and Peter Mandelson to volunteer and testify before Congress and tell us what they saw. It doesn't mean it's an admission of guilt. That would show that he's taking action. That would show that he's a powerful king.
It's being reported that the US has received a new Iranian peace proposal through Pakistani mediators. It's understood the plan includes a deal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, where both sides continue to block trade. But nuclear negotiations would be postponed. Trita Parsi, a former advisor on Iran to the Obama administration, told Andrew Marr Tehran won't concede more until it's sure it's got what it wants.
I can only see that happening if they are going for the full lifting of sanctions, meaning that this is the final deal. And in that scenario, perhaps they would give more, but they would need to get everything in return from the United States then, because once there is a deal, the Iranians have no leverage left to lift any of the other sanctions.
After more than a year's worth of action by refuse workers, Birmingham's bin strike could be about to end. The City Council leader thinks there'll soon be agreement on a new offer. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed down 47 points at 10,331. The pound buys $1.36 and €1.15. LBC weather, showers into this evening for parts of England and Scotland. Some heavy downpours for London and the southeast. Turning dry tonight, though, lows of 5 to 11 Celsius. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale, live from Washington.
Hello, a very good evening and welcome to the programme. It's Iain Dale live with you in Washington between now and 10 o'clock. And of course, you can watch our whole programme live on the LBC app, Global Player or the LBC YouTube channel. You know why we're here. Partly the reason why I'm in here, I was in the US anyway over the weekend in New York. So I thought, well, why not tootle down to Washington, D.C. and do a couple of programmes here while the King is in town. He's about to arrive. We expect the plane to land at Andrews Air Force Base, which is 20 or 30 miles outside Washington, I think, at around 7:55. So we'll bring that to you live. Then the King and Queen go to meet Donald Trump and Melania Trump at the White House, and then it's a rather nice garden party. Simon Marks, as you would expect, is going to be with me throughout the whole programme. Simon, it's quite an occasion, isn't it? This.
It's a massive event, this. There's no question about it whatsoever, Ian. I mean, I'm just watching, as you have been as well, live pictures that we are beginning to see from Andrews Air Force Base, where the royal couple will be touching down within the hour. And already 2,000 people are watching images of nothing more than a flight of stairs, a band that has gathered at the foot of the stairs, and a completely empty Andrews Air Force tarmac. So there is an air of expectation here, but I would also add that we just had a White House briefing from Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, and it is interesting that this city particularly is so fixated on the aftermath of the events of Saturday night at the White House Correspondents Association dinner, the attempt by a suspect who's going to be making a court appearance shortly here in Washington, D.C., to gain access to that White House Correspondents' dinner, where, of course, President Trump, Vice President Vance, all the key members of the cabinet were gathered with 2,000 guests for what was supposed to be a light-hearted roast of the president by the media and vice versa. That Caroline Leavitt simply confirmed during the course of the press briefing that the King and Queen are about to arrive for this 4-day state visit, but wasn't asked a single question about it and didn't go into any detail because the entire discussion was about the events of Saturday night and the investigation into what may have motivated the suspect.
Well, we're going to be talking about what happened on Saturday night a little bit later in this hour. The question I want to ask, if you want to contribute to the programme, give us a call, maybe send a WhatsApp message on 0345 6060 973, is should this state visit have gone ahead, particularly in the light of what happened on Saturday night? Because when it happened, I suppose I thought that it would still go ahead. But I think there have been some real concerns in Buckingham Palace and indeed Downing Street as to is security going to be good enough? So we'll touch on that in a bit. But before we do, let's cross live to our LBC reporter, Joseph Draper. He's got all the hot tickets in this state visit. I'm stuck in a fairly warm studio with Simon Marks for 3 hours, which of course I love. But Joseph Draper, he's at the British Embassy. Joseph, what's happening there? Because that's where the garden party is taking place a bit later.
Yeah, exactly. Beautiful weather here as well. You can see the preparations going on behind me. You can see the bunting. You can see the reception being planned there. Beautiful weather, as I say, for that garden party being arranged for the King and Queen when they arrive in just over an hour's time. They'll be flying into Joint Base Andrews, as I say, in about an hour. They'll be met by the British ambassador, Sir Christian Turner. There'll be a military band playing there as well, we're told. They'll be then whisked away to the ambassador's residence here behind me, which you can see via the White House, where they'll meet the President and the First Lady. An opportunity then, this is really to exercise some soft power with the President, with key people in the administration. But of course, as you've just been saying, it comes at an incredibly tense moment in Washington. All the discussion about that gunman, that potential that attack against the President and his team at a Washington hotel dinner on Saturday. We know a suspect has been arrested. He's due to appear in court today. And as you say, there were fears at one point over the weekend that this trip might be cancelled altogether because of the security concerns. Palace officials, we're told, were reviewing the royal security with the White House yesterday. They appear to have been reassured because the visit is going ahead as planned, really. And President Trump has been insisting that the King and Queen will be absolutely safe on their visit here. Here he is talking with CBS News earlier.
I think it's great. He'll be very safe, yeah.
Yeah. And will your events be able to go forward? You're no concerns about security going forward?
The White House grounds are really safe. Mm-hmm. This area of not very many acres, it's really safe. And he'll be staying here. Now, I believe he's going to a couple of other locations because he's here for a few days. And he's a great guy. They called and they are so looking forward to being here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
We spoke this morning.
But of course, the big keynote moment will come tomorrow when the King addresses Congress, marking the 250th anniversary of America's independence, when they won a war against us, splitting away from the Union. And of course, this whole visit comes at another low ebb in relations between us and America after weeks of severe animosity between the President and our government, particularly against our Prime Minister over his perceived lack of support for the war in the Middle East. That brings, of course, political risks for the King. Whether the President may actually insult our government, our Prime Minister, in the presence of the King, of course, that would be a huge breach of protocol if he were to do that. Certainly the hope in the government is that this will thaw relationships, this will calm the presidents down, that King Charles can effectively work his magic with the president and repair that special relationship. But I've been speaking to people here in Washington today. There's a mixture really of excitement and anticipation about that.
He's a public figure, so it'd be cool to see him, but
We also usually don't have like a lot of popular people come by here.
America is viewed pretty poorly around the world because of President Trump and his antics. I'm hoping that this visit will, maybe do something to help set him straight.
It's very hostile, especially with relations to not just like Great Britain, but everywhere, and that someone needs to help our government and our administration kind of calm down a little bit.
So you can hear there, this should be a happy occasion, but there's a real mix of nervous anticipation from those people I've been speaking to. Everybody looking towards the president and seeing what he'll say next. And really, even if this succeeds in bringing him back on side with our government, in easing those tensions, the question then is, how long does that last? We know how quickly the president can change his mind. Will that be a more permanent reset, or will it only really last until the end of the week?
Joseph, I imagine you're probably a fan of the Mission Impossible films. Well, I'm going to set you a mission between now and the time that we finish at 10, because I know you're outside the British Embassy. I want you to find out who's actually going to be attending this garden party, because any party that's held at the British Embassy, that is a hot ticket for Washington high society. Simon and I attended an event in the Deputy Ambassador's residence 3 years ago. Dame Karen Pierce, when she was the ambassador, believe it or not, she threw a party in my honour, can you believe? Simon will verify this, because I know most listeners won't believe it.
It's true.
And we had, who did we have there? Sort of Valerie Biden, Joe Biden's sister.
Absolutely.
Lucky Roosevelt, the granddaughter of FDR, various senators. So I want to know who's going to be there at the garden party this evening. Joseph, thank you very much indeed. Now, Simon, you have some breaking news.
There is breaking news. As I was saying, the arraignment of 31-year-old Cole Allen, the suspect in Saturday's attempt to attack the White House Correspondents' Dinner at the Hilton Hotel, which is just up the road from where Ian and I are sitting this evening, has now been on the receiving end of a third charge that is being brought against him by federal authorities, and that charge is attempting to assassinate the President of the United States. So that is obviously a very serious, the most serious possible charge currently that it would appear that he could face. It suggests that investigators have gathered more evidence directly to point to the possibility that the motivation of that attack was to try and kill the president. We know that in some of the writings that the suspect reportedly left behind, and indeed in some of them that he sent to members of his own family, reportedly prior to his efforts to get past security in the hotel, that he talked about trying to kill a number of Trump administration officials. But it wasn't clear whether he had specifically levied a threat against the President of the United States. Now they're adding that charge of attempting to assassinate the president, which means, I suspect, Ian, the possibility of this maybe even becoming a federal death penalty case if that is the way in which investigators decide to advance things over the course of the next few weeks and months. So very, very serious legal difficulties, even more serious legal difficulties now for 31-year-old Cole Allen, that teacher from California who made his way to Washington last week by train from California and booked himself a room in the hotel where the White House Correspondents' Association dinner was taking place, which in many ways appears to have allowed him to breach what was undoubtedly extraordinarily lax security at the hotel on Saturday night.
And yet Donald Trump seems to have jumped to the defence of the security services. I mean, is that for real, or do you think behind the scenes he's absolutely fizzing?
Publicly, they're all saying the security operation went down exactly the way it was supposed to go down. The Secret Service and the Washington Metropolitan Police did what they were supposed to do. They tackled the gunman, they brought him to the ground, and they apprehended him. Privately, behind the scenes, we know that the White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, is urgently convening meetings of the Secret Service top brass and the Department of Homeland Security top brass because they want a complete review of security operations, and driving that will undoubtedly be the concerns of First Lady Melania Trump. If you've seen the Melania documentary that she made about herself for Amazon, you will know that she is deeply concerned about the safety and security arrangements for her husband. There's a clip in that documentary where they're talking about the plan on Inauguration Day to get out of the car and walk down Pennsylvania Avenue for part of the journey to the White House. And she's the one that is asking questions, really pointed questions, about is that going to be safe? Is it going to be secure? And she sounds deeply dubious that it will be. Of course, in the event it didn't happen because everything happened indoors because of the cold weather. But on Saturday, when the president at one point said to the First Lady, would you like to come and talk to reporters about your experience at the dinner? She absolutely refused to talk. And I think she, more than anyone else behind the doors of that West Wing of the Oval Office, she's the one that's fizzing.
And I'm really grateful for the fact that you watched that documentary, so I didn't have to.
It's a great. I'm always in service.
To be fair, I do intend to. By the way,
it's worth it actually.
If you've got any questions that you'd like to ask Simon or indeed myself about this state visit or the events of the weekend, you know the number 0345 6060 973. In a moment, we'll talk to a security expert about what's likely to happen now in terms of the security for the president in the future, and indeed how procedures might have been tightened up for the coming state visit. It's about 40 minutes till the landing of the plane carrying the King and Queen at Andrews Air Force Base. We'll bring you that live on LBC. We'll take your calls, and we'll be talking to somebody who was actually at the state dinner at around 7:35. You're listening to LBC, or watching LBC, I hope. It's 17 minutes past 7.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
Why don't you get the Prime Minister on the phone and say, come on, Sakir, we've actually got to show some action here.
Straight to the point.
You're going backwards.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
This is not a one-off incident.
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
Go all Irish to France with great low prices. With Irish Ferries, you can for less. Irish Ferries. See travel differently. T's and C's apply.
Hi, I'm Sava, founder of Cool U, the daddy of air conditioning. For over 15 years, Cool U have specialised in installing our fully internal aircon systems with no mess, no fuss and no external condenser. Perfect for modern apartments, conservation areas, listed properties, or simply for those who don't want an ugly unit on the outside. Head to coolu.london. Cool U for a cool, comfortable home.
It's Munich, 1936, and all eyes are on the capital for the upcoming Olympic Games. As athletes fight for gold and the Nazis fight for power, Detective Sebastian Wolf faces a battle of his own in a search that will take him from high society to the city's darkest corners. Wolf is about to learn just how easily the hunter becomes the hunted. Evil in High Places is the gripping new historical thriller from the million-copy bestseller Rory Clements. Out now.
At Ocado, you'll save 25% on your first shop and get free delivery, which means if you were to buy a 4-cheese pizza, you'd basically be getting one of the cheeses for free. Save and splurge at Ocado, the online supermarket.
Geographical and other restrictions. Min spend £60 and charges apply. Discount available on food. New customers only. Max saving £20. Terms at ocado.com.
Iain Dale on LBC.
19 minutes past 7 on LBC. Now, a lot has been said about the events of the weekend. When it happened, you may have heard, I spoke to James Hansen and spoke to Sheila Fogarty this afternoon, and Henry Riley. I was actually in a theatre in New York City watching chess when it happened, so I didn't discover it had happened until about an hour and a half afterwards. And nobody in New York seemed to be remotely interested in it. I mean, people weren't like looking at their phones in the street, wondering what had happened. What were you doing when you found out?
I was at home because I don't attend the White House Correspondents Association dinner, nor indeed do I attend its analogue, the congressional dinner, because I just don't think reporters ought to be socialising with the politicians they cover. So I was watching a movie. I was watching Frankenstein, the new Frankenstein on Netflix, and enjoying a tuna pasta and a glass of wine. But I had it's funny because I had this sneaking feeling during the day that the weekend was going to give rise, as it invariably does here, to some kind of breaking news. So I kept looking at my phone while we were watching the film, and my youngest son, who was with me, kept saying, "What are you looking at your phone for? You're always looking at your phone." And I said, "Because I've just got this, I've just got to stay across."
At home as well.
I get it at home as well. So I thought, I've just got to stay across this. And then I picked up the phone and realised that we were not going to be able to finish the film, and came on air with Clive.
Now, there are a lot of questions that have been thrown up, not least about the security for the state visit. I mean, you would have thought they would have crossed every T and dotted every I on security, but clearly lots of conversations were being had over the weekend.
Well, they needed to be had, because you would have thought they had dotted every I and crossed every T at the Hilton Hotel on Saturday night. And the fact that we now know, I mean, I knew on Saturday evening that it had not gone the way it should have gone, but we now know just how lax security was. The Wall Street Journal has an interview today with a former FBI agent saying that the point at which the suspect breached security was the point at which he checked into the hotel several days ago, because once he was in the hotel as a guest, if you were a guest at the hotel, bizarrely, there was no security screen as you walked.
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all.
And they didn't vet all the guests.
And if you were a guest for the dinner, only the guests for the dinner were required to pass through metal detectors. And in order to pass through a metal detector, you had to present your paper invitation to the dinner, but you were not asked to match the name on it with your photo ID. So this is, and in my experience, I mean, I haven't been to these dinners for a long time, but in my experience, that was never the way things operated. And this argument that's been advanced that, well, it's such an enormous hotel complex, 47 meeting rooms, 1,000-odd guest rooms, you can't possibly seal it off.
That's why we need a new ballroom.
That's why you need a new ballroom. It's arguably why you also could use some gun control, but it's also a fatuous claim. I mean, I covered the G20, as you know, in South Africa last year, and I was staying in the hotel where Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan was staying, and there was a significant presence by another country's top officials, not including the head of state. And, you know, I was in the hotel for a week before the Turkish president arrived, but 2 or 3 days before he arrived, the hotel was completely locked down, sealed off. Every room was searched. Every room was security screened. And if you wanted to get into the hotel after that, you had to pass through pretty heavy doses of security, which is not what was taking place here on Saturday. So I think they were absolutely right, the palace, to engage in very serious conversations about what level of security is going to exist for this visit.
This is why I don't understand. I saw various US reporters on X and elsewhere saying they thought the security was really lax. And then you have Wolf Blitzer, the main anchor for CNN, saying, oh, it's the tightest security I've ever experienced at one of these dinners. They can't both be right.
Well, let me tell you why you're not going to hear from the American media what you're going to hear from me about this. And it's because the American media is complicit in this event. The networks, the broadcast organizations, the major news organizations that attend that White House Correspondents' Dinner, and to its great credit, the New York Times doesn't, except sending 2 reporters to cover it as a news story. Many of them were hosting pre-dinner parties and post-dinner after parties in that hotel. Major corporates were also hosting events in that hotel. And they don't want to have to be in a situation where White House Deputy Chief of Staff or a member of Congress from Wyoming or wherever it happens to be have to go through security, and their guests dressed in their finery. They just want to get them in, feed them, curry favour with them, and then get them downstairs through the magnetometers to the ballroom. So the problem with this event, and this is nothing new, and this is nothing about the Trump presidency, this has been going on for a long time, is that this event has become an act of complicity between the news media in this town, celebrity culture, big business, and the presidency, the administration of the day, and Congress. And we're going to go through exactly the same thing later in the year with the big congressional dinner as well. And it's got to be dealt with, because you could have had a set of circumstances on Saturday where a more organised, planned, carefully orchestrated attempt to attack that hotel could have resulted in story after story after story of concrete crashing down, if it had been blown up, onto the ballroom below, with basically the entire American government in it.
Right. Well, let's talk more about security with James Hamilton. He's the founder of the Hamilton Security Group. He's a former FBI supervisory special agent and the creator of its Close Protection School, and talks to us from South Carolina this evening. Thank you very much indeed, James, for joining us. When you heard about this attempt, we can't really say for definite on the president's life, but certainly on members of his administration. What went through your mind? Was it how on earth could this happen?
Hey, thanks for having me. No, it really wasn't that. It was here we go again, and grateful he didn't get closer than he did, but not surprised. Not no.
Why weren't you surprised?
Well, we have it frequently. This president has been, we have Butler, we have his golf course, we have this event, we have Charlie Kirk. I mean, we are living in a time in this country where it's almost not daily, but certainly monthly, that we're having something like this happen, and it's not stopping. So no, I'm not surprised by it. And in my business, we usually don't get surprised by violence.
And I guess it's impossible to be 100% secure, whoever the person is that is being guarded. But clearly lots of conversations will have been had over the weekend in terms of the King's State visit. Clearly people in our country were concerned about the level of security. From your experience, what kind of changes might have been made as a result of what happened on Saturday night?
Well, I think the King's visit certainly is going to be, I don't really put him in the same bucket, because you've got, as I look at his itinerary, the majority of the visit is being held in and around what I would expect to see, which is secured environments, being the Blair House, the White House. I believe he's landing at the Air Force Base at Andrews. So that's typical as to what I expect to see. When we're having a dinner, like the Correspondents' Dinner at a public hotel, which, presents an incredible amount of challenges, that is not what I would expect to see for the King, and I haven't seen that yet, and I don't expect to see it. And I think the palace is right to want to have further dialogue with regards to security around the visit, and I think that's right.
What do you think the implications are for the security services here? Because Donald Trump, I think, has been quite generous to them in some ways, certainly for the way that they reacted. But it's clear that a lot went wrong in the run-up to this, that the guy, the alleged perpetrator, was not vetted in the way that you would expect someone to have been if he'd been staying in that hotel. Do you think behind the scenes there's going to be a lot of political consequence to this?
No, I don't, because I haven't seen it in the past. I've seen a lot of things happen and a lot of, bravado, if you will, with regards to things will change and adjustments will be made, and I don't see that happening. Here we are again. I would just, if I could, say that it's difficult. Understand what you're saying in theory does make sense when you say the word vetted. But if you would look at, for instance, the hotel guest, and you run those names through a number of U.S. databases, well, this individual would not have shown up. So the degree of vetting that we all would like to see done is a bit it's a bit unrealistic, in that if there isn't anything on record other than this manifesto that would not show up in an NCIC or criminal history check is what we would do, or an FBI or Secret Service index search, then you don't have anything on the individual. And I'm not saying I don't know what they did with these people, but certainly that would be something you'd want to look at. But if he's clear, if you don't have anything on him, then the vetting, there wouldn't be anything on the guy.
No, but on the other hand, if you'd had metal detectors there for every guest that came into the hotel, then I guess then his guns and knives might have been detected there. But it's all very well in hindsight to say this, isn't it? James, thank you very much indeed. That's James Hamilton there, founder of the Hamilton Security Group. The plane carrying the King and Queen has just landed at Andrews Air Force Base with a nice Union Jack on the tail, presumably a British Airways charter flight, or is it a Royal flight, Simon?
I'm not sure, actually, what the carrier arrangements are, but they've landed at Andrews Air Force Base on an absolutely glorious spring day, as we were hearing earlier from our reporter Joseph Draper. They've come in about 25 minutes early, so they've made very good time in getting here. We are seeing the plane now making its way towards the end of the runway, and then it'll come onto the main apron of the airport, where an honour guard is waiting to greet the King and Queen, and where I think there is a band that, of course, is going to be playing as they get off the plane. They're going to be greeted by, among others, the new British ambassador, Christian Turner. Who, of course, is filling the void left by Peter Mandelson. They're going to be received by the Chief of Protocol of the United States, Ambassador Monica Crowley, who's a very familiar figure here, not least because she had an extensive television career on Fox News before she was brought into the government by President Donald Trump. They're going to be receiving poses from children of British military families based in the US. They will be greeted by diplomatic, federal and state representatives, including senior members of the British Embassy in Washington and representatives of the United States government before leaving Andrews Air Force Base. And then, of course, they'll be arriving here in the centre of Washington at the White House for what is sort of an informal greeting. It's not the official commencement of the state visit. That takes place tomorrow morning, but there's an informal greeting and a series of events that we'll tell you about a little bit later on the programme.
Now, I'm going to take what is known in broadcasting as a calculated risk here and go to the news, because I think it'll take a while for the plane to taxi to where they'll be getting off. So let's get the latest LBC News headlines at 7:32 with Matt Hewitt.
Security's tight in Washington, with the King and Queen due to touch down in the next few minutes for their state visit. The suspected gunman in the weekend shooting incident near a black tie event attended by Donald Trump in D.C. is facing a further charge attempting to assassinate the president. Sir Keir Starmer has urged Labour MPs to stand together against an attempt tomorrow to launch a parliamentary inquiry into claims he misled the Commons over the Peter Mandelson row. The Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy, exclusively told LBC he thinks the Conservatives are keen to keep the affair in the news to muddy the waters before local elections. And the House of Lords has voted in favour of a social media ban for teenagers for a fourth time. It's so far been rejected in the Commons 3 times, with the government saying it wants to wait for the end of a consultation next month. LBC weather. Turning dry tonight with some drizzle in the east. Lows of 5 to 11 Celsius.
LBC.
At Pets in a Pickle, we're here when it matters most. For fuss-free pet insurance policies as unique as they are. Visit petsinnerpickle.co.uk.
Dan's in.
Jen's in.
Tom. Alice. Looks like everyone's on board.
Oh, and Jess.
Tell Jess to meet us at the train station an hour earlier, though. She's always late.
Make it happen with South Eastern Group Save. Save 1/3 on the price of train tickets when you travel at off-peak times in groups of 3 to 9 adults. Buy direct from our app or website with no booking fees. Terms and conditions apply. Find out more at southeasternrailway.co.uk/group save.
Southeastern. Oh, you want weight loss advice?
Weight loss? Actually, what you want to do...
I got my weight loss secret from my mother, who got it from her mother's my tip weight loss.
Forget that. You just
keep dancing. Dragon fruit.
Podcasts.
Advice.
Or you could go to MedExpress. MedExpress. Healthcare without the noise. Go to medexpress.co.uk/weight loss.
Ali 60mg hard capsules contain orlistat for overweight adults with a BMI of 28+. Follow a reduced calorie, low-fat diet. Always read the label.
At Ocado, you'll save 25% on your first shop and get free delivery, which means if you were to buy a 4-cheese pizza, you'd basically be getting one of the cheeses for free. Save and splurge at Ocado, the online supermarket.
Geographical and other restrictions. Min spend £60 and charges apply. Discount available on food. New customers only. Max saving £20. Terms at ocado.com.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
7:35, it's Iain Dale and Simon Marks live in Washington, D.C. We're covering the King's state visit, which is about to get underway because the plane carrying the King and Queen has just landed at Andrews Air Force Base. I'm reliably informed by Chris, who knows about these things, that this is one of the 2 planes that Boris Johnson ordered, Simon, to carry government and royal people around. I think it's coming to a halt now, so they haven't actually got off the plane yet, so I was right to go to the news. Thank goodness for that.
You were.
Because I could have lost my job over that one.
Well, it's a very nice plane. It's got a huge Union Jack on the back. It's emblazoned with the words United Kingdom in gold writing down the side. And it is inexorably heading now towards a flight of stairs that will be wheeled up to the main door of the jet so that King Charles and Queen Camilla can alight the plane and set foot on American soil to begin this state visit that, of course, has been so clouded with questions, with uncertainty even this weekend in the light of that security review. But, of course, they've decided to press ahead with it. 96 hours, a 4-day state visit that, of course, will see the centrepiece of its events taking place here in Washington, D.C. in many ways tomorrow, including the state dinner tomorrow night. And before that, a very important opportunity for the King to say whatever he wants to say, of course, with the advice of the government, in an address to a joint session of Congress. This will be the King's first state visit to the United States as King. His mother, the late Queen, made 4 separate state visits during the course of her reign to the United States. And, I was thinking a lot this morning and actually reviewing, Iain, some of the pictures and the sounds of the Queen's 1976 visit here, which, of course, was in America's bicentennial year. She came in July of that year for the country's 200th birthday. The King is coming in April of this year for the country's 250th birthday. And it's fascinating when you look at the reception that she received from President Gerald Ford and the way in which they could, without any artifice, without any nervousness, fulsomely speak about the nature of the special relationship as being simply the most important relationship, as the Queen put it, between two peoples anywhere on the planet. That this was the most important, tightest bilateral relationship you could possibly imagine. And President Ford responding in kind and sort of joking about the fact that the animus of what had taken place 200 years ago at the time had been replaced by this tremendous comity and amity between the two countries. And you just can't imagine those sentiments being as confidently articulated and as authentically articulated in this visit when it gets underway.
Well, you say 1976. Let me throw 1991, actually, because earlier today I was recording my Where Politics Meets History podcast with Tessa Dunlop, and she reminded me what happened in 1991 when George H.W. Bush was president. It was just in the aftermath of the Gulf War. And the Queen gave a speech in the Rose Garden at the White House. And they had, shall we say, misattributed the podium. So all you saw was the top of her hat because she's so short. So you saw sort of these microphones and then the top of her hat. And then she gave a joint speech to the joint session of Congress. And her opening words were, "I do hope you can see me," and it brought the house down, as you can imagine.
Well, but in many ways, both of those visits, I mean, it was a simpler time. It was a simpler time in the bilateral relationship. It was also a simpler time for the United States. I mean, there are big questions here.
Well, you say that, but it was in the aftermath of Watergate.
Yeah, but I mean, it was a simpler time in the sense that when America came together in 1976 to celebrate the 200th birthday, the country was entirely united and behind it. The country came together to engage in that celebration. It is not clear that that is what we're going to see this July on the 250th
and as I understand
birthday.
it, the preparations for those celebrations are in absolute chaos. And that they've appointed someone to run it who has no experience of running this sort of thing, and it's all going very, very wrong. Now, I'm sure it'll be all right on the night, but at the moment, it looks a shambles.
And my understanding from people that are involved in working on this 250th birthday is that one of the issues that everybody here is facing is that there are Americans out there that feel that it is too closely identified with Donald Trump. I mean, if you look out of the window of our building here, you can see Lafayette Park is being dug up and there's a huge arena being put directly in front of the White House because he thinks that what America really needs to celebrate its 250th birthday is an ultimate fighting championship tournament taking place in an arena right in front of the White House.
WWF?
The UFC, the thing that he goes to weekends. I mean, this is not the way in which in 1976 the country celebrated its birthday.
Well, another thing which I was told, and I don't know whether you've heard this, later on, whenever I come to Washington at midnight night, on one of the nights I'm here, I go to the Lincoln Memorial, which for anybody of you that's ever been there, at night, it's right next to the Vietnam Memorial. It's very atmospheric. And I just sit there looking down the so-called Washington Mall and just contemplating life. And it's very evocative. Donald Trump's idea is to drain the different sort of ponds that go down the mall, drain them of the water, and paint the bottom of them red, white and blue.
Well, he's turning the reflecting pool. He's got a lovely blue swimming pool plan for that. We heard all about it last week, bizarrely,
I'm behind times,
at a White House event. The steps are being slowly wheeled up to the side of the plane. So we should very soon be seeing King Charles, Queen Camilla and everybody else that's on board that jet alight, come down the stairs in the case of the King and Queen, and be officially welcomed to America as they set foot on US soil for the first time, for the King as monarch making his first state visit here. So things are about to kick off. As I say, unofficially a little bit later in the afternoon, they will be paying a courtesy call to the White House. They're going to be taking tea with the President and the First Lady, and then they will be heading off camera,
so
an off camera tea.
There's not going to be a Zelensky moment.
They are being shown the White House beehive by the President and the First Lady, about which we can talk a little bit later. The beehive,
Do you know
it's a
much
new.
about bees?
I've done my research.
Okay,
it's a
good.
brand new beehive. Modelled on the White House, and it's all part of the White House Honey program, which we can talk about a little bit later.
So many comments I could make.
We're not going there, though. We're not going there, because in a moment, hopefully, the doors of that jet are going to open, and you can see the Royal Standard and the Stars and Stripes being flown from the cockpit. The window of the cockpit has been opened, and those two banners now flying on American soil. They're just adjusting the steps, making sure that it's in the right position for the doors to be opened and for the royal couple to get off this plane and head down the steps and set foot on the tarmac at Andrews Air Force Base.
It's very interesting that looking at those pictures, there's a very small Union flag at the top of the not cockpit, but the top of the door that they will come out of. Can you imagine the Americans on Air Force One being as subtle as that?
Well, and we've got a new Air Force One coming that President Trump has played a significant role in designing, which is going to be very much modelled on his own personal jet, which is described by him as Trump Force One. So we're going to be seeing an even more muscular design than we've previously seen.
Let's have a text competition. Because this plane has not got a name. It's not called Royal Force One or Government Force One. What should that plane be called? The plane that carries the Prime Minister when he goes on official visits, the plane that carries members of the royal family when they go on an official visit. What should we name it?
And we will be screening the answers.
We will, because as soon as I said that, I thought, is this such a good idea? 84850. I can't see the text screen here, but Chris,
which is a bit of luck,
will be, shall we say, sifting the best ones. Now, we're not going to go to a break because I think they are obviously going to appear in the next couple of minutes. So what happened? So Andrews Air Force Base, how far outside Washington is it? It's not that far.
It's not that far. I mean, they'll obviously speed through any traffic, so they should be getting into the city within 25, 30 minutes, I think, fairly easily. I'm not exactly sure if they're heading straight to the White House or whether they make a first stop to, as the Americans would put it, freshen up. But they're certainly due at the White House for the unofficial arrival ceremony. They're going to be arriving at the South Portico of the White House. They're going to head to the state floor, and they will then sit and have a cuppa with the President and the First Lady in the green room. And after that, they'll take the tour of the Beehive and the White House garden. I mean, the set-piece events tomorrow, though, are going to be absolutely critical in determining the success or failure of this visit. We're now seeing a member of the US military knocking on the door to make sure that, well, I think they do that, don't they, to check the pressure's all been depressurized, to confirm everything's okay. So any second we should see that plane door being opened, final adjustments being made. She's given the thumbs up as she heads down the stairs, final adjustments being made to the red carpeted set of stairs that has now been moved up to the side of the plane. I mean, it's the set-piece events that are going to define this visit, along, of course, with Donald Trump's behaviour, not just during the set-piece events, but after them, and maybe even before them. That joint session of Congress tomorrow is a big deal for the King to be addressing.
One thing which I haven't yet been able to find out, I don't know if you know the answer to this, at the state dinner, who speaks first? Because I imagine it's Donald Trump.
It's the host, it's the host, absolutely.
So, because if it had been the other way round, there wouldn't be a chance for King Charles to reply to anything he said.
Right, because of course, the other way around at Windsor for the second state visit, I don't know if you know, it was unprecedented and historic second state visit.
Unprecedented. You're absolutely right. But now you've made me forget what I was going to say.
Who speaks first?
No, we were talking about who speaks first.
Responding to Donald Trump.
Because that is the moment of maximum danger, isn't it, in this visit? Because it's really the only time that both of them get to speak in public.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the maximum point of danger with the King, because he, I think, can be almost certainly guaranteed to stick to the prepared remarks. The difficulty, of course, with Donald Trump is that remarks are prepared for him. And even at Windsor, by the way, he went off script a little bit. He was much more controlled in his toast at Windsor than he normally is. But even there, he went off script. We've seen the red carpet now on the tarmac being rolled out. Children gathered at the foot of the stairs with their posies that they are going to be presenting to the royal couple. Once they touch American soil, their majesties will be receiving posies from children of British military families based in the United States before being greeted by diplomatic, federal and state representatives. Of course, there'll be representatives from the state of Maryland, because Andrews Air Force Base is in Maryland. It's not in Washington, D.C., so there have to be representatives from state government there. There is a rather fierce Secret Service lady at the end of the red carpet who is making sure that everything is secure. The honour guard now in place, and I think within seconds we will see the door of that jet open and the royal couple come down. Someone's going up the stairs there to preside over the official opening of the door. And any second now. There it is, the door opening now. And the royal couple, gentleman's gone on board the plane to welcome the royal couple, and we will see the King and Queen alight momentarily.
And this is another moment of maximum danger, isn't it? Because there have been occasions when, because these flights of steps, particularly if you're somebody in the mid-70s, I mean, they're not necessarily easy to negotiate. And I think Donald Trump has a bit of a fear of stairs, doesn't he? But he always has to hold on to a rail, which, after my breaking my hip, I have to.
I mean, I was going to say they're not even easy to negotiate for the rest of us. No. I loathe it when I have to get off a plane and go on stairs. Here now we are seeing here in Washington the King and the Queen stepping out of the aeroplane, beginning their journey down the stairs in the bright sunshine. The King wearing a dark blue suit, the Queen wearing a pink dress. Looking
a summer dress.
A summer dress, it is. Both of them looking very comfortable as they arrive. The King shaking hands with Monica Crowley, the official representative of the Trump administration, the chief of protocol for the United States.
Didn't she write a biography of Richard Nixon?
I think she did. I believe that's right. I believe that's right. Former ambassador. She worked in the State Department at ambassadorial level during the first Trump term in office. Christian Turner, the new British ambassador to the United Kingdom, the second person to greet the King and the Queen as they are escorted over to receive posies. The Queen receiving a posy from those children of British military families based in the United States. Then they're going to make their way past the honour guard gathered at the airport and get into a limousine that will take them from Andrews Air Force Base so that their official programme, their unofficial programme of events this afternoon, their official programme of events tomorrow, of course, can get underway. Greetings now being exchanged with various representatives who are on board. I see Yvette Cooper getting off the plane now in the rear there, along with other officials that have travelled with the couple. Fascinating days ahead for the Foreign Secretary.
Well, they are, because I think a lot of people won't realise that the Foreign Secretary traditionally accompanies the King or Queen or whoever it might be on a royal state visit. Douglas Hurd was there in 1991 with the Queen when she came on her final state visit to the United States. I wonder what the small talk was like on the plane.
Well, I was thinking about that, and I was remembering that on the day that John F. Kennedy fatefully flew into Texas, on the plane, he turned to Jackie Kennedy Onassis and said, "We are heading into nut country today." And of course, that was the day, tragically, when he was assassinated. I'm not saying for a second that kind of event is going to be repeated here, but you do have to wonder whether informally there were any conversations on the plane about the nature of the current United States and how they're going to navigate what is without question the thorniest state visit by a monarch that we've seen, since the 1950s, since Queen Elizabeth II came to power, and even before that.
So they're now getting into a BMW, which is, I think, a little odd, wouldn't you have thought?
How can you tell it's a BMW?
I just know it is.
You just know from your extraordinary personal experience with BMW.
I can see from the alloy wheels and the lights at the back.
Thank heaven.
I think now you've got me doubting myself now, Simon. It looks like a BMW to me, but you'd have thought they would have flown the flag and had a Range Rover.
Well, let's see what it is. But I bow to your superior knowledge of BMWs, never having personally owned one.
Well, I did own one once. As you know, I'm an Audi man, but I just think that if you're in this position, you should have a British car. And there's plenty to choose from, actually. But then again, no, it's definitely a BMW.
I'm assuming anthems are being played because salutes are being taken and everyone is frozen in place. The flags of both the United States and the UK fluttering in what looks like a fairly stiff breeze at Andrews Air Force Base, band playing on the tarmac alongside the King and the Queen as we wait for them to get in the car. It's a split-screen moment, this, here in the United States, because at this very moment, reporters are gathering at the Department of Justice for a news conference that is going to be held by the Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche and other officials about the shooting incident that occurred on Saturday at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. So the attention of America's television networks, at least, are being diverted away from what we're witnessing here at Andrews Air Force Base, and possibly later on from what we're going to be witnessing at the White House, and onto the continuing news that is emerging about new criminal charges being brought against Cole Allen, the 31-year-old suspect, as we were reporting earlier on the programme, now facing a charge of attempting to assassinate the President of the United States. So on American media, at least, that press briefing by the Acting Attorney General is going to take up a lot of attention. Now the anthems or the music has ended, and the King and the Queen making their way into the vehicle that is going to whisk them through the highways and byways that will bring them closer to the centre of power here in the United States, the White House, Washington, D.C., where we are literally sitting. We are a stone's throw ourselves, are we not, Iain Dale, from the centre of power?
Your studios here are in an ideal place, which is presumably why you picked them, because we went up onto the roof earlier where I recorded. If you want to see the view from Simon's office, go onto my Twitter feed, and I recorded a little promo for the programme up there. It's just the most astonishing view. We sadly missed our national anthem there because I was going to shut you up if they played that, because it would have been very disrespectful to speak over it, wouldn't it?
It would have been. I hope I didn't.
No, you didn't. You spoke over the American one.
Oh, well,
we'll see if we can get away with that one.
That'll get me in even more trouble.
So they are about to be driven off to the White House. How long will it take to get to the White House from there? What, 45
Well, I'm not sure they're going
an hour?
straight to the White House. If they are going straight to the White House, they'll be very early for their cup of tea. So I suspect there might be a stop on the way. I'm not entirely sure, but it shouldn't take that long. I mean, I would say within 35 minutes if they're going straight there.
Well, we have been deluged with possible names
I bet
for
we have.
our new plane. Do you want to? Shall I do these?
Go on.
Right.
You started it.
I did start it. Well, Chris, my producer, said Air Fast 1, which I thought was very cruel. John in Hartlepool and David in Romford both say Planey McPlaney Face.
I knew that was going to be
as do many, many others since. Tom in Preston, Speedbird King. Josh, Con Air. John, GB1. Yeah, then you miss out Northern Ireland, though. I don't think you could do it. UK one, possibly. Alan says Freebie Jet. Alex says Hair, H-E-I-R, Air Force One. He's not there now, he's the king. Then Adam adds, if Harry and Meghan use it, Spare Force One. I like that.
I like the next one.
They're not likely to. Noel says Magba. Make America Great Britain again. Here, here, here. Have you still got Jerusalem on the desk there? Sam in Watford says U-turn Air for the Prime Minister's plane. David says, no, I'm not reading that one out. Steve says Airfix Model 1. Nick from Slough, the Pride of Britain. Andy and Maidstone, Landing Hope and Glory. I see what you did there. Martin in Cardiff says Sane Force One. Right, just before we go to the news, let's hear from Mackie in Barnet.
It is a BMW.
It is a BMW. You doubted me, didn't you?
I did, but it is a Beamer. And it's now making its way with the King and Queen on board out of Andrews Air Force Base.
Mackie, on a scale of 1 to 10, how incandescent are you that the King and Queen are being driven in a German car?
Well, it is rather odd because they normally fly royal cars out the day before to do this sort of thing, so it's quite unusual, but it is definitely a BMW from what I can see.
Yeah. So do you think this state visit should still have gone ahead after what happened at the weekend?
Well, to be honest, I was a bit sceptical at first, but watching this now, the soft power really is quite something that the royal family can bring. But what I was interested in, and Simon's knowledge, incidentally, Simon, you should have an OBE for services to American British broadcasting. You really are quite something. Absolutely amazing broadcasting. I do mean that.
Only an OBE?
An OBE, maybe even possibly.
That's a bit insulting, isn't it?
I'm chuffed, Mackie. Thank you very much.
No worries. But in your sort of inside knowledge, I wondered what your thoughts were on the conversations that would have taken place between the King's people and the President's people, because there's no doubt there's going to be nerves that Donald Trump's going to go off script, and, you know, Charles being Charles, he's obviously not going to respond to that. He's going to do his duty as sort of required. But no doubt there'll be huge nervousness, certainly at the palace.
Well, I am obviously not privy to those conversations, Mackie, but my guess would be that the Palace and Number 10 and the Foreign Office have made it repeatedly clear that they are not going to tolerate anything that takes place off script. I mean, the one thing we're absolutely not going to see on this visit is Donald Trump welcoming the King into the Oval Office, bringing all the reporters in, and then engaging in one of these extemporized editions of the Trump show that goes on every single time heads of government arrive here, or the NATO Secretary General, or any official visitor. Events that have gone off the rails in the case of the visit of President Volodymyr Zelensky, or the case of the visit of South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. So I definitely do not think we're going to see anything extemporized like that live, and I suspect that every minute that the two of them together has been completely planned, conditioned, and it has been made repeatedly clear to people like White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles that under no circumstances will the UK, the royal household, or the British government tolerate any off-script moments by the President of the United States. But you can't constrain what he does late at night when he's in the family quarters of the White House and he starts taking to Truth Social. I mean, that's what I think is really going to concern and worry the government and the royal household as this visit gets underway.
Mackie, thank you very much indeed. Tim in Welling says it's a BMW i7 Protection, a fully armoured electric limousine.
Fully armoured and electric.
Yeah, don't get
electric.
£100.
What kind of a message is that sending to a man who thinks we should be drilling for North Sea oil?
Right, we are going to move on in the next hour. Obviously, we are still going to be talking about the state visit. What I really want to know from you in this hour is, do you think that the King of Great Britain and Northern Ireland can secure the special relationship again? Because that is his mission, isn't it? To improve the special relationship. I think he's probably going to do a good job at that. I'm not sure that it will ever get back to the days of Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, but you never know. A day is a long time in politics in this country, isn't it? 0345 6060 973. We'll be talking to somebody who was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. We'll be talking to the Royal Editor of Newsweek, and we'll be talking to you. 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the King has landed in the US for the start of his 4-day state visit. Charles and Queen Camilla are expected to head to the White House, where they'll be welcomed by Donald and Melania Trump. They just touched down at the Joint Base Andrews Air Base in Maryland near Washington, D.C. Some details of their trip have been tweaked after shots were fired near Donald Trump at a black-tie dinner. Royal historian Sir Anthony Selden thinks Charles will be unfazed.
He's a very brave man. I'm sure that the security will have been phenomenally thought through, and if anything, will be even safer.
Meanwhile, the suspected gunman in Saturday's shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner has been charged with the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Cole Allen's accused of trying to breach security at the black tie event in which a Secret Service agent was injured. A judge told the 31-year-old he'll face a maximum sentence of life in prison if found guilty. He's due in court on Thursday. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says constant hateful and violent rhetoric from commentators, the Democrat Party and some in the media was to blame for this third major assassination attempt on the US president.
Those who constantly falsely label and slander the president as a fascist, as a threat to democracy, and compare him to Hitler to score political points are fueling this kind of violence.
Labour MPs have been told by their whips to vote down a Tory motion calling for Sir Keir Starmer to be referred to a parliamentary committee for investigation. The Prime Minister denies misleading the House over Peter Mandelson's vetting process to become US ambassador. The Commons will vote on the issue tomorrow. Sir Keir Starmer denies the opposition leader's claim he misled Parliament by saying due process was followed, despite the peer failing security checks.
What my political opponents are doing tomorrow is a political stunt. And the reason they're doing it is that they don't agree with what we're doing as a government. We've got huge amounts of transparency going on already.
And the House of Lords has voted in favour of a social media ban for teenagers for a fourth time. It's so far been rejected by the Commons 3 times, with the government saying it wants to wait for the end of a consultation next month. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 47 points at 10,331. The pound buys $1.36 and €1.15. LBC weather showers into this evening for parts of England and Scotland. Some heavy downpours for London and the southeast. Turning dry tonight with lows of 5 to 11 degrees Celsius. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Katie Dartford.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale, live from Washington.
Hello, a very good evening and welcome to the programme. If you've just joined us, it's Iain Dale here with you live from Washington DC until 10 o'clock. We're obviously covering the state visit. The King and Queen have arrived at Andrews Air Force Base. They're now being taken in an armoured BMW to the White House, where they'll meet Donald and Melania Trump, and then they'll go to the British Embassy for a garden party. How very British. So one of the questions that we're asking you is, should this state visit really have gone ahead, given the security concerns that there clearly were in Buckingham Palace and in number 10 Downing Street after the events on Saturday night? Delighted to say that Ambassador John Bolton joins me, former US National Security Advisor during the first Trump administration and also former US Ambassador to the United Nations. Ambassador, welcome to the programme. Good to talk to you again. If you had still been National Security Advisor now, what would you have been saying to the President about how it came to pass on Saturday night and the performance of the security services? And indeed, what advice would you have given about the state visit?
Well, I think there's clearly a need to review Secret Service procedures. You know, like anybody else, they can fall into a pattern. I've been to this dinner in years gone by, and it didn't look to me like the security checks were much different from what they had been in the past. And repetition, obviously, is a way for people to learn how to get around the practices that they see. So I think it's incumbent on the Secret Service to be constantly updating. And so some kind of review here to increase people's confidence in their skills is necessary. There's a very dedicated group of people, but I think force of habit works with them, unfortunately, as it does with everybody. In terms of the King's visit, I wouldn't have recommended any change. I think obviously the target here was the president. The King's main events, certainly in Washington, are all on U.S. government property, at the White House, in Congress, in the, well, not U.S. government property, but at the British Embassy out in the garden, where I think security will be very tight. His schedule elsewhere in the country I'm not that familiar with, but I'm sure security will be very high.
The president was, I thought, comparatively diplomatic for him in the immediate aftermath, praising the security services for their prompt action. Do you think, for once, he was being very diplomatic and that behind the scenes he will have been asking some very searching questions?
I suspect that's right, although if you know the particular venue at the Washington Hilton Hotel, this gunman was a long way from doing any damage to the president. I think, obviously, the protective bubble worked. He was able to penetrate it in ways that have to be investigated. But the point of having multiple layers of security is nobody really believes there's one foolproof method to do it. And again, it worked, and thank goodness there were no deaths and only one minor injury.
How do you think this will affect Donald Trump personally? Because obviously he's had, there was the attack in Pennsylvania not that long ago where his ear was grazed. He came within, a few millimetres of being shot. And there have been a couple of other incidents. How does that affect someone psychologically, do you think?
Well, I think it certainly must have an effect. His reaction Saturday night was, it shows how consequential a president I am because so many people have tried to attack me. And his immediate reaction was to say, this shows why you have to build this ballroom at the White House that I want. In fact, the ballroom is a non sequitur. Most of the rallies that Trump loves so much are far more dangerous, as the Butler, Pennsylvania incident showed, than being in a secure environment like a hotel ballroom. But there's no doubt anybody who comes that close as he did in Butler is going to be affected by it.
And obviously there's so much going on in the world now which you would have views on. I know you've got to go very shortly, but just one word on the Iran situation. The Iranians have come up with what they're purporting as a sort of a new plan, but it doesn't involve them stopping enriching uranium, but it does involve opening the Strait of Hormuz. What would be your advice to the president on from what you know of this new plan?
Well, I would say reject it out of hand. Any day that the Iranian regime can push back discussions on their nuclear program is a day that's plus for them. I think this whole ceasefire is a benefit to them. They were the ones getting pounded. They were the ones seeing their leadership being decimated. And that's not happening. They're not able to export oil, which is bad for them. But the Gulf Arabs can't export oil either. So I think the president's got to make up his mind whether he's prepared to use military force to clear the Strait of Hormuz. I think that is necessary. You can't leave this in the hands of the Iranian regime like a light switch that they can turn on or off. He may not like that. He's got a lot of political difficulties at home to worry about. I think that's what's primarily on his mind. And it's too bad. If he had thought this out more carefully, if he had prepared more carefully, I think we could be on the way to regime change, or at least significant change in Iran's capacity to threaten terrorism, threaten the nuclear weapons, and threaten the closure of the Strait of Hormuz.
And just in 30 seconds, can the special relationship be rebuilt through this visit? Because it's clearly been damaged.
Well, I think the special relationship is much broader than just the relationship between the political leaders, between the president and the prime minister. It rests on shared values, a shared history, a shared interest, culture, language. I mean, I could go on at length. Obviously, the relationship between Trump and Starmer is about as bad as it can get. I think King Charles, I think the president wants to have the king have a successful visit. I think that's very important. And let's face it, Keir Starmer may not be prime minister that much longer. Maybe we'll get a restart with a new prime minister.
Ambassador, thank you very much. A pleasure as always. That's Ambassador John Bolton there talking to us. Right, it's now my great pleasure to introduce my next guest live in the studio with me in Washington, D.C. Great friend from her days as London correspondent for Die Welt in, how many years was it, Stephanie?
10 years.
10 years. It's the voice of Stephanie Bolton. She is now North America editor for the German newspaper Die Welt. And you were at the White House Correspondents' Dinner on Saturday. Just take us through your own experience.
Yeah, indeed, I was. And it's very nice to see you, Ian, really. It was maybe half an hour into the dinner. We just got our starters, and I was sitting in the middle of the room, and I was facing on my left hand the entrance doors, and on the right hand the stage where the president was and the vice president. And this flag, you know, they're carrying the flags around. They sing the anthem and the flags, and they had just gone out. And suddenly I heard this pock, pock, pock. And really, it sounds crazy, but I thought, am I back in Britain? Because sometimes when the king comes in, they make this pock, 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 and it came from the entrance doors. I thought, is this another performance? And in that very split seconds, the door opens, and like a half a dozen of men in suits come running in, and I just hear, "Get down, get down!" And then I knew, this is not another performance. This is a shooting. So we just dived under the tables with my colleagues and some officials and waited. And it was, I mean, I was just thinking, what's happening out there? Is there maybe someone being hurt? I know that was my main thought. And also, of course, for a little moment, I thought, hopefully it's not like Bataclan, like Paris 2015. Yeah. There are lots of attackers. But then I thought, hey, the US president is here, Secret Service is here. It's probably just one guy, and we are safe.
So you, if you were under the table, then you wouldn't have seen the Secret Service people bundling J.D. Vance out and then the president?
No, I didn't, because I had someone from the Pentagon with me, and he was adamant that we stayed down. So he was outside. It was kind of all the girls were under the table. I'm not joking. And all the men were around us, and they didn't let us come out. But of course, I was itching to get my phone and do something. Yeah.
Well, being a journalist, you
being
you
a journalist, but I wasn't allowed.
Apparently, there was one journalist who refused to get under the table and just carried on eating his starter. I don't know who that was.
There were several people I saw who just kept on eating and were watching what was going on. I didn't, and I thought it was the cautious thing to do and take shelter.
So looking back on it now, I mean, it must have been, were you frightened?
I was a little bit frightened. I was more upset. I was upset that this was happening again. I was upset of thinking what might be the damage being caused. I was upset because, what is happening in this country, that there's so much political violence, and that even at an event where the president is, now in being the president, unlike Butler in 2024, that this can happen and somebody can come so close and cause so much damage. That was my main thought.
So how long have you been in Washington now? A couple of years?
3 years.
3 years?
Yes.
How time flies. What have you learned about this country that you didn't know before in those 3 years?
That Americans are very different. Very different. So I was not a big expert on the United States before I came here. I became an expert of the Brits, of course. I spent a lot of time there. But I learned that you can't understand the country unless you go out. You have to travel a lot, and you find all kind of people who have a very different view on how government should work, how Washington works. This is such a vast country. They want to have their gun. They want to have their liberty. They want to make their choices, whatever they are, and don't want to be told by anyone to do something. And the other thing I really learned is how many people look at Europe thinking this is really a doomed place. On the other hand, I have a lot of friends, especially here in Washington, who think Europe is the place to be. And somehow I'm not sure anymore where the place to be is.
And obviously we're obsessed about the relationship between our country and the US. You're writing about presumably the relationship between Germany and the US. And your new Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, he's incurred Donald Trump's wrath a little bit as well, hasn't he?
He has, but interestingly, I'm talking quite a lot to officials. For the time being, and you have to be very careful about it, Germany is the blue-eyed boy because of the defense spending. I can really say that the UK currently is in very bad books. There's a lot of anger here in Washington about the UK, about Keir Starmer, about dithering. They thought it's a special relationship. They thought that Britain from the beginning would support them in the Iran war. And there is, I not only Donald Trump in the White House says Starmer is not Churchill, I really also hear that behind closed doors.
And what are your expectations for this visit? Because in a way, the King's mission is to try and at least start to repair the so-called special relationship. It's an impossible task, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I think, of course, it will be wonderful. And the president, as we know, he loves the royal family. He loves these kind of events. It's another show for him to have. But then you go back to the day-to-day, and the British government is in a very different place, and there are domestic politics needs by the Prime Minister, and for the time being, that doesn't match what the US President expects from the UK.
And of course, in Germany, I always think, a lot of the magazines, certainly when I lived in Germany, admittedly a long time ago, they were obsessed with the royal family, because obviously you don't have a royal family, and I think it's a bit like America. You kind of adopt ours in a strange sort of way. So the king, the Queen was always box office in Germany. Is the king to the same extent?
Here in the US?
No, in Germany.
In Germany? Well, I'm not living in Germany anymore, but the Queen was the Queen. That's different. And of course, there were so many good stories in between, Charles and Diana, Harry and Meghan. And the King is, of course, he's respected, but I think the Queen was just something so unique and so historic. And to be fair to the King, it's very hard to take over from the Queen.
Stephanie, I wish we had longer, but thank you very much indeed for joining us here in Washington, D.C. In a moment, we're going to talk to Jack Royston, who's Royal Editor for Newsweek, and we'll take some calls, 0345 6060 973. Do you think the special relationship can be rebuilt, at least in part, through this visit? Or frankly, perhaps you don't care? I do, because I think the relationship between Britain and America has always been, well, I say always, certainly since the Second World War, has been absolutely integral to our whole being as a nation, part of an international alliance led by the United States. Is that disintegrating? Can it be rebuilt? 0345 6060 973. You're listening to LBC. I'm Iain Dale. It's 19 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
Noticed a change in your hearing? Well, get a hearing check from Specsavers. Oh, not sure where to start? Well, we're very flexible. Book one online, on the phone, on your lunch break, on Saturdays, on the same day if you're lucky. Oh, you only miss the odd word. But what if the odd words you're missing are nice ones like love you, or important ones like duck? Oh, too expensive, is it? All right, we like you. We'll do it for nothing. For free hearing checks, should have gone to Specsavers.
At Ocado, you'll save 25% on your first shop and get free delivery, which means if you were to buy a 4-cheese pizza, you'd basically be getting one of the cheeses for free. Save and splurge at Ocado, the online supermarket.
Geographical and other restrictions. Min spend £60 and charges apply. Discount available on food. New customers only. Max saving £20. Terms at ocado.com.
If you were missold a home on a holiday park, holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive compensation. Text ADVICE to 78900.
Right then, who's all in for Cancer Research UK's Race for Life?
anglers, ramblers, climbers, five-a-siders, surfers, gamers, bikers, hang gliders, book clubbers. Are we up for it? Let's go all in against cancer, all in to help fund life-saving research. Sign up to your local 3K, 5K, 10K or Pretty Muddy event from just $14.99. Search Race for Life. Prices vary by event distance and participant age.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
8 on LBC. We are in Washington, D.C., covering the King's state visit. Jack Royston joins me now here in our studio. He is, I promoted you earlier, I said you're a royal editor, chief royal correspondent for Newsweek. Only a matter of time.
Exactly.
Now, like me, you arrived here yesterday. What are you expecting?
Well, I think probably the most significant moments may well happen behind closed doors, because it's all going to come down to those conversations between the King and Trump. Charles is preparing for his first of those. Obviously, you want to hit the ground running and have a good first interaction. He's on his way to the White House for a private tea with Donald Trump and Melania Trump. And that will be a moment where he, I think, will probably focus on trying to just keep those interactions warm, keep that relationship warm, and hope against hope that everything goes smoothly from there. The big danger and risk, I think, is probably going to come tomorrow, in fact, when we have the speeches before a joint session of Congress. I'm sure Charles will simply read a very carefully written speech, word for word, but what will Trump do? Will Trump start making...
I don't think Trump doesn't give a speech there, does he?
I think we are expecting... We don't know exactly how much Trump will do his usual thing of just saying lots of stuff to lots of reporters everywhere he goes. But the risk for Charles persists after each event. It is not confined even to the visit itself. So Charles will be very careful with his words. They then go on to the state banquet in the evening. And again, it's an opportunity for Charles, I think, just to try to get Trump feeling a little bit better about Britain. And they will have gone through every single step in the choreography, especially carefully after the shooting on Saturday, because obviously they reviewed the security. But there's another slightly awkward one, potentially, which is Virginia, because Charles is going to visit Virginia. It's obviously a place that has been in the news recently, a state that's been in the news recently because of the redistricting issue, the debates about maps. Now, Charles, he's not going to be accompanied by Trump on this visit, but it's going to be quite an extensive visit to Virginia. My slight background concern is whether Trump starts talking about that visit after the King has left and starts saying, well, I got the King over to Virginia, because it's going to be such a crunch state in the midterm elections coming up. Virginia alone has the capacity to flip the House and to force Trump to lose control of the House of Representatives. So if Trump were to start trying to use the King's visit as part of a campaign strategy in the midterms, and that would be very, very dicey for the monarchy. So it all comes down to how much Trump just wants to play ball with the monarchy. But historically, the palace actually quite like the Trump administration, both terms, both the first term and this term, because Trump loves the royals so much. They're incredibly easy to deal with, and not all of the teams are.
Do we not have to distinguish between the palace and the King himself? I was reading an article last week that was alleging that the King cannot stand Donald Trump personally. Now, if that gets back to Donald Trump, who knows what might... I've got no idea whether it's true or not. You're much better connected in these circles than I am.
Well, listen, let me give you two different perspectives on that. There is personal beef, if you like, not the most royal phrase, but there are personal tensions that date back to 1997, when shortly after the Princess Diana passed away, Trump made very insensitive comments on the Howard Stern radio show, in which he claims that he could have slept with Princess Diana. Then when Princess Catherine with Princess of Wales was caught sunbathing topless by paparazzi photographers in France in a private chateau, Trump went on Twitter, as it was at the time, and said it was Kate's fault, and why is she sunbathing topless? Of course she's going to get photographed. So that, we understand, caused huge anger and upset among the royals themselves, not just William, but Charles and Harry too. However, the other side of that coin during the state visit to Windsor in September, there were some really interesting moments in the B-roll footage from the banquet that day, which included a moment that really stuck out to me when Camilla was talking to Melania. Kate wandered up, joined the conversation, took part in the conversation for a while. Melania instantly focused all her attention on Kate, and you could see Camilla looked a little uncomfortable at that, and at some point ushered Kate away so that she could return to her one-on-one conversation with Melania. So on that basis, and a few other moments in the choreography in the body language and the interactions from the B-roll footage of that state banquet, I think that you could see genuine warmth between the two couples.
Well, I think the key thing here is, as you say, what happens afterwards. I mean, there may well be at the state banquet, which I don't know whether they actually broadcast. I think they do broadcast the speeches from that, don't they?
I certainly hope so, because I'm potentially going to be commenting on it live for C-SPAN. So if they don't.
Excellent. I'm sure we'll have it overnight as well. I mean, how much wargaming do you think will have gone on in the palace, where they sit the king down and somebody plays Donald Trump and makes a speech which says, well, of course, the Falkland Islands, they really belong to Argentina. I mean, he won't do this to that degree. But there may well be a couple of off-the-cuff comments which the king has to have a prepared response for. Now, you can't prepare everything, but do you think that his aides will have sat him down and said, well, if Trump says this, you should say that?
Yeah, I don't think they do a rehearsal like the kind of lawyers do with their defendant, with their suspects. But I think that they will have said to him, and they will also have gone through with the Foreign Office. King Charles's speech won't just have been drafted by palace people alone. It will have been gone through by the Foreign Office. And I would not actually definitively rule out Charles potentially trying to say a couple of things that could be construed as relevant to the bigger picture issues, because he did so when he gave a speech marking Elizabeth II's centenary. He talked about the state that the world is in right now. Now, it'll be very, very subtle. There'll be nothing that tackles the issue head on. But he'll be talking about unity. He will be talking about how far back the special relationship goes, because the context of this visit is the 250th anniversary since the Declaration of Independence. So in as much as he talks about how deep this history is, he'll probably also talk about the future, preserving that relationship into the future and making sure the two countries remain united.
This is a tightrope to walk for the king, isn't it? Because we imagine nowadays that the special relationship has existed almost since America came into being. Well, we then have to remember why America came into being in the first place. And we also have to remember that this state dinner is in the very building that the British burned down in 1812.
Yeah, well, it's kind of crazy that America love us so much and love the monarchy so much, but they do, and I think that I don't think that will create any kind of tension or difficulty within the relationship. And I think Charles, actually, if you look at how he performed when he went over to Barbados for them removing him as head of state, which was kind of happening in front of his eyes, he was entirely calm and relaxed, and I think he is very comfortable in these situations. And he does, Charles isn't somebody who has a deep, profound philosophical belief that every single person must love the monarchy and want the monarchy. He's a thinker, he's a very cerebral, philosophical man, and he hugely understands, I think, the people who actually don't. But he's not engaging with someone who doesn't like the monarchy, he's engaging with someone who adores the monarchy.
So, final question, have you got an invite to the garden party?
I'm not going to the garden party. No, it sounds absolutely lovely. And the weather's perfect for it.
You could have seen the beehive. I mean, what's not to like?
The White House-shaped beehive is fantastic, isn't it? I love it.
Jack, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. That's Jack Royston, their Chief Royal Correspondent for Newsweek. Let's take the question we're asking this hour is, can the special relationship still be rebuilt through this visit? Kevin says the Prime Minister gave Donald Trump a second state visit and it achieved nothing. He went on to implement tariffs and insulted the military, London, the Prime Minister himself and the London Mayor, while he also threatened to invade a European country and threatened Canada too. He supports far-right campaigners in the UK, France, Germany, Italy and Hungary. The King has no influence over Donald Trump whatsoever. Soft power, my backside. Well done, Kevin. Angela says, I think King Charles will nail it. He has an eloquent way of using his words, and I believe and hope Trump feels really silly about his actions and behaviour. But I don't hold my breath. And nor should you. I don't hold my breath on that one at all. But we have to remember that he does have this immense respect for the royal family, and Donald Trump is himself, which we tend to forget, is half British. His mother was a Scot. So, do you think that the special relationship is salvageable through this visit? Well, not if Donald Trump plays up to the remarks of some people in his administration by questioning the sovereignty of the Falkland Islands. We'll be talking to somebody who is an expert on that issue from the Falkland Islands herself in just a few moments. And we'll hear an interview that my colleague, or part of an interview that my colleague Ben Kentish has done with the Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy. You're listening to LBC. I'm Iain Dale. It's 8:30, and let's get the news headlines with Katie Dartford.
The King has touched down in the US for the start of his 4-day state visit. The government's hoping he can fix the special relationship between the two countries. Cole Allen, the suspected gunman in Saturday's shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, has been charged with the attempted assassination of the US president. A judge told the 31-year-old he'll face a maximum sentence of life in prison if found guilty. And Labour MPs have been told by their whips to vote down a Tory motion calling for Sir Keir Starmer to be referred to a parliamentary committee for investigation. The Prime Minister denies misleading the House over Peter Mandelson's vetting process to become US ambassador. LBC weather: showers into this evening for parts of England and Scotland, turning dry tonight with lows of 5 to 11 Celsius.
The LBC app. News your way. This is LBC.
Next.
Hi, just these, thanks. Do you do cashback?
Just need to check you're not a robot first. New security policy.
Okay.
How many traffic lights can you see out the window?
Oh, 2?
No, that's wrong.
Right, well, obviously I'm not a robot.
That's what a robot would say.
What a load of malarkey. Smarty keeps things simple, like 80 gigabytes for £10, and on a rolling monthly SIM plan, you're free to leave any time. Less malarkey, more smarty. Search Smarty Mobile.
Shine Night Walk London is a 10k, half marathon or full marathon supported walk around the city at night on the 19th of September to raise vital money for Cancer Research UK. It's also
everyone walking with all their colours, twinkling away. We can actually see how nice London is. And London is different at night time. Celebration of life, and it gives hope.
Step towards a brighter future at shinewalk.org today to get 30% off your entry. Together, we are beating cancer. T's and C's apply.
Oh, you want weight loss advice?
Weight loss? Actually, what you want to do...
I got my weight loss secret from my mother, who got it from her mother's My mother. tip weight is... loss?
No, forget that. You just
keep dancing. Dragon fruit.
Podcast.
Advice.
Or you could go to MedExpress. MedExpress. Healthcare without the noise. Go to medexpress.co.uk/weight loss.
Ali 60mg hard capsules contain orlistat for overweight adults with a BMI of 28+. Follow a reduced calorie, low fat diet. Always read the label.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
It is 8:33 on LBC. Welcome back. You haven't gone anywhere, have you? I don't know why I said welcome back. I was always taught in my first programme never to say welcome back, and I just did it after 17 years. Outrageous. Simon Marks is here with me. Any developments while you've been out of the studio?
There is a press conference underway by the Acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, the FBI Director Kash Patel, the somewhat beleaguered FBI Director Kash Patel, and the US Attorney Jeanine Pirro, confirming that they are bringing that third criminal charge against Cole Allen, the suspect in the Saturday attack on the White House Correspondents' Dinner, or the attempted attack on the White House Correspondents' Dinner, because, as you were hearing earlier in the hour, that the alleged gunman never got close to the ballroom downstairs where President Trump and the Vice President, everybody else was gathered, but they are bringing a charge of attempting to assassinate the President against Mr. Allen. The Acting Attorney General said they are going to be, I think his word was very thoughtful or careful about the nature of the penalties that they seek to go after. And because this is going to be done in federal court, there is the real possibility that they could pursue a federal death penalty case against Mr. Allen. But it also sounded from the manner in which Todd Blanche was speaking that I think quite a bit may hinge on psychological profiles and evaluations that take place.
Donald Trump has already carried that out.
But they didn't make an announcement about the nature of the penalties, or at least they haven't done thus far. The briefing is continuing.
Well, one of the other controversial things that's happened over the past few days is that a member of the Trump administration has questioned the future sovereignty of the Falkland Islands. It's part of a paper that has been submitted to the president, effectively titled, I say effectively because I'm making this up, but effectively titled Ways to Get Back at Britain for Not Supporting Us During the Iran War. And one of those ways would be to side with Argentina over the sovereignty of the Falkland Islands, as if Donald Trump is the arbiter of sovereignty of any country in the world. Now, this has obviously angered many, not least in the United Kingdom, not least in the Falkland Islands themselves. So I thought it would be really good to get a perspective from someone who was born and brought up in the Falkland Islands and was their former representative to the UK of the Falkland Islands government. She's now a trustee of the Falkland Islands Memorial Chapel at Pangbourne College in Berkshire. Well worth a visit. It's Suki Cameron as she joins us now. Suki, very good evening to you. When you heard what had been said by this Assistant Secretary to the Assistant Defence Secretary or something like that, what went through your mind?
The thing that annoyed me most was not the fear of lack of support from the UK government, because we are very convinced that that is totally solid, but it gives false hope to Argentina and they start getting excited again. And that is never a good look. And it just worries me that they build up this hope that perhaps the president can facilitate some sort of agreement, which he can't. So that is my main concern when statements like this come out.
You're absolutely right in building up excitement in Argentina, because their vice president has apparently told Falkland Islanders, basically, if they love England so much, to go back to England, which is not exactly helpful. And is it true, and I think I'm right in saying that the Argentinian president is about to embark on a visit to the United Kingdom? So I mean, that'll be interesting.
Well, yes, I heard that there was a visit planned. I haven't heard any detail. But certainly, yes, it will be interesting, and it won't be a good place to start if they start making comments like that, as the Vice President made today. Perhaps they'd like to go back to Spain, where they came from.
Ooh, fighting talk. But I mean, the question here is, though, the British government can say what it likes, but we all know that we don't have the defensive capabilities that we had in the early 1980s. And I think it's almost inconceivable to think that a British Prime Minister could do what Margaret Thatcher did within a couple of days of the invasion in 1982 and effectively set a task force to sail to the Falklands to reclaim it. Now, we have much better facilities on the islands, defensive facilities on the islands themselves. But in the end, we couldn't do what we did in 1982, could we?
That is a concern, but on the other hand, nor could Argentina, given the parlous state of their armed forces. And one would hope that they wouldn't even contemplate doing that, given what happened 44 years ago.
Now, you live in the UK now, but what are you hearing from islanders themselves over the past few days on this? Is it making people feel a little apprehensive? Because it would be quite understandable if that was how they were starting to feel.
Well, we were down there in February and obviously talked to people about the subject. We've got a fairly new Legislative Assembly elected last November. So it's obviously one of the things that we were discussing. But we've been used to this. This has been going on, for so long. It's something, it doesn't make the news here every day, but we hear it, week on week in the islands. There's something coming out of Argentina one way or the other. And as I say, given the solid support that we get from the UK government, we don't believe that there'll be any change in policy. And we're just, it's just the unpredictability of President Trump that is a bit of a concern, to say the least.
Suki, thank you very much indeed. That's Suki Cameron there, former representative to the UK of the Falkland Islands government. Simon, how seriously do you take these rather injudicious remarks from the Trump administration?
Well, I think you have to take them seriously. I mean, this is a proposal that has been drafted by a well-known figure within Trump world, the Undersecretary for Policy at what the Trump administration calls the Department of War, the War Department. His name is Elbridge Colby. He's the grandson of William Colby, the former CIA director during the Nixon era. So he's someone who's absolutely been steeped in the policy discussions of Washington, D.C., I mean, almost from birth. And while this is a paper that is presenting a range of options and ideas for the President of the United States to consider, knowing the way that Trump world works, it is unlikely that Mr. Colby would have simply been spitballing here unless he thought that the president for whom he works would be open to receiving some of these ideas. And, the idea of engaging in a review of America's backing of British sovereignty of the Falklands. And remember that during the Falklands War, I mean, Margaret Thatcher was at issue with Ronald Reagan, because Ronald Reagan back in 1982 was saying, sue for peace. Don't send the Navy halfway around the world to fight the battle. So the Americans, from the British government's perspective, have never been entirely reliable as an ally.
They did not come to our assistance until really at least a month after the war started, because they had this ill-fated diplomatic mission which the Secretary of State Al Haig led, didn't lead anywhere at all. And even at that point there were still voices in the administration led by Jeane Kirkpatrick, the UN ambassador, to support Argentina. And it was really Caspar Weinberger, the Defence Secretary, that really, I mean, he was giving, I think, behind the scenes help to Britain all along without actually telling anyone else in the administration. And Margaret Thatcher said at the end of it, he's the one that Britain owes most to in that administration.
Yeah, and in the current era, it is very important to zero in on the nature of the relationship between President Donald Trump and the Argentinian leader Javier Milei. They are peas in a pod. They are not only ideological soulmates, but the Trump administration loaned Javier Milei money in order to make sure that his political movement could triumph in recent local elections. So this would be, were the United States to engage in this review, merely the review would be a huge gift to Javier Milei, who only, I think, on April the 2nd or April the 3rd, reasserted Argentina's insistence that it has the rights of sovereignty to the islands.
And President Milei and Donald Trump have something else in common, don't they? They're both polling 33% in the opinion polls, record low polling ratings. Right, more from Simon in just a moment. But first, let's hear from Grace in Ealing. Grace, you want to answer the question, can the special relationship be rebuilt after this visit? Well, I hope you do anyway.
Well, I think in answer to the question that it probably can't. I think that it's great that there's going to be presumably a degree of friendliness, and that clearly Charles is very skilled in a diplomatic sense. But John Bolton referred to the shared values of our countries, and I think Trump has just walked all over those. He really kind of celebrates greed. He is so vitriolic and boastful in the way that he talks or writes. And those things are really contrary to the values that we have presumed to be at least esteemable in the West. We've kind of presumed for a long time that one should aim towards civility and generosity, and Trump kind of abandoning even aiming towards those things makes me feel that whatever Charles does, this relationship is a bit ruined while Trump is in power.
But that is the transient nature of power, isn't it? He will be in power until 2029. Is it 2029? Yes,
January 2029.
But I mean, after that, things may come back to normal. America will be there long after Donald Trump is gone. The presidency will be there long after Donald Trump is gone.
I hope things return to normal to some extent. One thing that's really always in my mind is that he has shut down their aid department, which was doing incredible work, incredibly cost-effectively helping the world's most disadvantaged people, and that can't just be restored. That was kind of representative of the idea that the West should be helping people elsewhere in our world who are really disadvantaged, and it can't just be brought back. Now he's shut it down, and tens of millions of people are going to suffer as a result. But it was in my mind yesterday after this, or the day before, depending on when one woke up, following the attempted assassination, that at Charlie Kirk's funeral, it was spoken about how we're told by Jesus, although I know most people don't believe in him, but the idea in the West has been that we should aim towards loving our enemies and being forgiving. That's something that we've kind of seen as something that was good, even though we really struggle as human beings to do that, to be forgiving or to love our enemies. We've thought of that as a good thing, but Trump immediately got up and said, no, I don't do that. I hate my enemies. And so if we have that attitude, you know, from the most powerful man in the world, it filters down into our culture, and I feel like our society as a whole is becoming more vitriolic and acrimonious.
No, I think that's a really good point to make. You know, one of the things that I thought was most disgraceful after the attack on Saturday was some of the social media response to the fact that Erica Kirk, Charlie Kirk's wife, was in tears. Now, that whole incident will have brought back very painful memories for her, won't it? And yet people were alleging that these were crocodile tears, that she was somehow in on it. I mean, these ridiculous conspiracy theories that are built up, that the whole thing was somehow staged. And these are being promulgated by otherwise sensible people. I mean, I think what goes through people's heads in these circumstances? I mean, I saw a tweet from Morgan Freeman, the actor, who basically said it was all staged, with absolutely no evidence for that whatsoever. Grace, thank you very much indeed. I know, Simon, you've seen a lot of this stuff. I mean, how widespread is this view?
The notion that it was staged, I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, it's stunning. If you take a look, we did, as you know, you were part of it, the rolling coverage that we did over the weekend on Clive Bull and James Hanson's overnight programme Saturday night, Sunday morning. If you go to the LBC official YouTube channel and you look at the clips that have been uploaded from that coverage, you will see thousands of responses in the comments. You will be hard-pressed to find a single comment from anybody who doesn't think that the event was a false flag operation, who isn't advancing the notion of it having been a conspiracy theory. And in many ways, it felt to me like a turning point. Because we had seen within the last week or so, when Tucker Carlson, the former Fox News host, and up until recently prominent Trump supporter, bailed on his support for President Trump and apologized to Americans for ever having backed him in the first place. After making that apology, he and his brother, who was his guest on his podcast at that point, both started talking about the need to review what had happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, the assassination attempt in July of 2024, and whether that was legitimately what it purported to be. I mean, it feels to me as though we have turned a corner here now, where it becomes where conspiracy theories are being promulgated not simply by a small number of people, many of them rooted in Donald Trump's Make America Great Again movement, but across the political firmament, which presents a real danger to American society and to American discourse, fueled as some of those conspiracy theories were by the instant creation of AI video purporting to show things in that ballroom that did not take place. You can find, if you look for it on social media, video of Kash Patel, the FBI director, grabbing 2 champagne bottles off a table in the ballroom before he exits. Didn't happen. AI produced, and that was instantaneous. I mean, within hours of those events. And for those of us who want to traffic in facts and want to make fact-based assessments of what is taking place on any given day in any given nation, you know, all of that is extremely problematic and puts America on a very dark path.
Nick says, once Farage is PM and we start operating in a sensible and responsible way, then the special relationship will go back to normal. Well, I'll tell you what, I detect a distinct cooling of the relationship between Nigel Farage and Donald Trump, and I'm just waiting for the moment that Donald Trump lets rip at Nigel Farage.
Well, and the Falklands issue has created a real potential problem for Nigel Farage. Again, another moment of possible separation between him and the president.
Now, Simon and I are going to contain our excitement because things have been happening in Britain today on the political front, and guess who we're going to be speaking to next? Could it be?
Could it be?
It could be.
Oh, that's marvellous.
Aggie Chambray. Coming up in just a couple of minutes. It's 8:49.
This is LBC. Listen on the move with the LBC app.
Hey there, it's your big McDonald's hunger calling. And it's not just any kind of hunger, it's the kind that calls for big arch. Start with juicy beef, cheddar cheese and big arch sauce. Oh, and don't forget those crispy onions. Hungry? You are now. Served from 11 a.m, subject to availability. Price and participation may vary.
Your time is valuable. Your perspective should be too. The Economist cuts through the noise with the stories that truly shape your world.
How can you believe that a new regime won't crush you just like the previous one?
Online scams are stranger than they've ever been.
When the world's turned upside down, know which way is up. Read, watch, or listen to The Economist.
Oh, you want weight loss advice?
Weight loss? Actually, what you want to do...
I got my weight loss secret from my mother, who got it from her mother's. My tip weight is... loss?
No, forget that. You just
keep dancing. Dragon fruit.
Podcast.
Advice.
Or you could go to MedExpress. MedExpress. Healthcare without the noise. Go to medexpress.co.uk/weight loss.
Ali 60mg hard capsules contain orlistat for overweight adults with a BMI of 28+. Follow a reduced calorie, low fat diet. Always read the label.
The following is from TfL. I got loads of flowers the other day. And messages from people I didn't even know. My mates spelled out my name in tea lights. And my mom hung my favourite footy shirt on the railings, next to the lamppost, where I got killed. By a nice lady. Just someone who thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit. Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
At Ocado, you'll save 25% on your first shop and get free delivery. Which means if you were to buy a 4-cheese pizza, you'd basically be getting one of the cheeses for free. Save and splurge at Ocado, the online supermarket.
Geographical and other restrictions. Min spend £60 and charges apply. Discount available on food. New customers only. Max saving £20. Terms at ocado.com.
Iain Dale on LBC. Listen on your smart speaker. Just say, play LBC.
It's 8:51 on LBC. Let's shift away from what's happening here in Washington at the moment for a moment to reflect on the day's political events in the UK, because MPs are set to vote on whether Keir Starmer should face a parliamentary investigation over the appointment of Peter Mandelson in his statement to Parliament, where many people are alleging that he misled the House of Commons. Keir Starmer's been speaking to the Parliamentary Labour Party tonight and given a major interview as well. There's only one person you want to talk, well, maybe two, Natasha Clark would be the other, but there's one person we talk to on this programme regularly about this sort of thing. It is, of course, our Deputy Political Editor, Aggie Chambray. Aggie, very good evening. What's been occurring today?
Well, what an yet another extraordinary day, Ian, in British politics. Accumulating in Sir Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House, saying that there will be a debate and a vote tomorrow on whether or not Sir Keir Starmer should face a Privileges Committee inquiry. And that will then make tomorrow the sort of triple whammy for Sir Keir Starmer. So, number one, his MPs will take a decision. And it really is, we expect the opposition parties to vote for this inquiry, but it will really, the pressure will be on Labour MPs choosing whether or not to vote for this inquiry or not. And lots of them, I think, will vote against it and will vote with the government, who will be whipping.
Well, they're being whipped, aren't they?
Exactly. So I think a lot of Labour MPs will vote with the government. But I think there will be some who I've spoken to today who aren't sure. We're going into that meeting with the Prime Minister earlier, basically saying it depends what he says in terms of whether or not they would vote with the government or not tomorrow. And as you say, he has also done an interview today, and we can hear a little bit of that now.
What my political opponents are doing tomorrow is a political stunt.
And the reason they're doing it is that they don't agree with what we're doing as a government. We've got huge amounts of transparency going on already.
To the public is don't panic, but actually...
That was Keir Starmer there. And we also heard our colleague Ben Kentish spoke to the Justice Secretary, David Lammy, and we can hear that now too.
The Prime Minister has misled Parliament multiple times. There is still a lot of information that doesn't add up. And what I'm seeing is a Prime Minister who is saying whatever it is he needs to say to save his own skin.
That was, of course, Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservatives, not David Lammy. But I said, Ian, the triple whammy. So we've got that vote tomorrow, which will probably be early afternoon. And then we have at 9 a.m. Sir Philip Barton, who is the former top civil servant at the Foreign Office. He will be asked lots of questions, I'm sure, about the so-called constant pressure that the person who took over from him, Sir Ollie Robbins, told the committee last week about in terms of that appointment of Lord Mandelson and the vetting surrounded it. And then after that, at 11 a.m, we have the real blockbuster moment. And that is when Morgan McSweeney, who of course was the Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff, the right-hand man of Sir Keir Starmer for so many years, and lots of Westminster watchers, lots of Labour figures think that actually Sir Keir Starmer may never have been Labour leader, may never have been Prime Minister without Morgan McSweeney. And yet, I don't think we've ever heard from him really in public before, and he will be quizzed about Peter Mandelson, his long-time friend, and also about other things like his stolen phone, like so many other issues. And he will be, as I say, up in front of that select committee at 11 a.m. tomorrow. So it's going to be another really difficult day for the Prime Minister. And then, of course, there's this vote about whether or not he did mislead Parliament, or whether or not he should go to an inquiry where they would decide whether or not he misled Parliament.
Aggie, thank you very much for informing me that if I want to watch these Select Committee hearings tomorrow, which I do, I'm going to have to set my alarm for 4 a.m. Not sure whether that's going to happen. I haven't got any great plans tonight, though. I'm going to... Simon told me I'm going to a club that's the place to be in Washington tonight.
The place to be.
It's got a slightly strange name, Ned's.
Yes, the epicentre of
the Soho
Trump
House,
world.
I gather.
It is the club where the Trump people go to hang out after work. You will, I'm sure, encounter some household names there.
Well, I'll report back tomorrow. Aki, thank you very much indeed for that. Now, the guests are presumably arriving at the British Embassy for the garden party. Right? Have you ever been to a garden party at the British Embassy?
I have not been to a garden party at the British Embassy.
It's outrageous. One of the leading Brits in Washington, D.C., and you haven't had an
Unbelievable.
invite.
Hadn't had the invite. Unbelievable.
I mean, there's not going to be speeches. I mean, this is very it's a formal, informal occasion.
I think it's a formal, informal occasion. I'm sure there will be comments, of course, by the King to thank the embassy staff and their families for their service here in Washington, D.C. And I do think it's important to underscore, Ian, that embassy staff, they've been through a lot over the last few months because of the entire Peter Mandelson disaster. And I'm told that morale inside the embassy has been very challenged as a result of, having to pack Mandelson's things up and send him home, and that this has been a very, very difficult process of transition. And remember also that one of the reasons why it's been so difficult is that the embassy staff, many of them, were very attached to Peter Mandelson's predecessor, Dame Karen Pierce, who, as we were talking about earlier, threw that event for you when you were here, your close personal friend, Dame Karen Pierce. And, one of the abiding questions, with hindsight, about the entire Mandelson saga is, why was there a need to replace Dame Karen in the first place? I mean, let's be honest, she could not have telegraphed more clearly her desire to remain in post. I mean, I was joking with colleagues and friends and saying they are going to need a crane to get her out of that embassy. She did not want to leave. So there were, regardless of the talents and abilities that you might have thought Peter Mandelson had, net against the liabilities. You know, the question of why they felt it was so urgent to change things when she had spent the best part of 2 years, like many other diplomats here in Washington at other embassies, building bridges to Trump world, and she had really worked on that.
And she became known in Washington as the Trump whisperer.
And he was content with her, you know.
And she was. I mean, it's difficult to convey how much of a character she was, and still is. And the irony is that she's now being touted as the new permanent secretary in the Foreign Office. I mean, you couldn't make it up.
And an extraordinarily effective communicator. I mean, she was a regular presence on the Sunday television talk shows here, on CNN, on MSNBC, on Fox, and very adept at, I think, connecting with American audiences. And so, you know, hindsight, as the Americans say, is 20/20. But you know, the idea that she was replaced by Peter Mandelson without any apparent real reason for doing so, other than perhaps the fact that you really admired his experience on trade in Europe and you thought that was going to be useful to you, I think is an abiding question about this affair.
Right, coming up in the next hour, the King and Queen are due to arrive at the White House very, very shortly. They'll be meeting the Trumps, and they will be shown the new beehive on the South Lawn within the next half an hour. And then, of course, it's time for the garden party at the British Embassy. We set our intrepid reporter, Joseph Draper, a mission to find out who exactly is going to be at that garden party. I suspect some people are already going to be arriving. We'll be talking to him, and we're going to play you part of an interview that my colleague Ben Kentish has done with our Deputy Prime Minister. Henry Riley will be sitting in for Ben this evening. He'll play out the full interview. We'll maybe get some comments from you on that as well. 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, the King and Queen have touched down in the US. Charles and Camilla are on a 4-day state visit, the first to the country by a British monarch in almost 2 decades. Government's hoping they can fix a special relationship between the two countries. But John Bolton, Donald Trump's former national security advisor, told LBC it might be down to other factors.
It rests on shared values, a shared history, a shared interest. Obviously, the relationship between Trump and Starmer is about as bad as it can get. I think the president wants to have the king have a successful visit. I think that's very important. And let's face it, Keir Starmer may not be prime minister that much longer. Maybe we'll get a restart with a new prime minister.
Meanwhile, the suspected gunman in Saturday's shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner has been charged with the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Cole Allen's accused of trying to breach security at the black tie event in which a Secret Service agent was injured. A judge told the 31-year-old he'll face a maximum sentence of life in prison if found guilty. He's due in court on Thursday. Speaking exclusively to LBC, the Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy said a new inquiry over Lord Mandelson's appointment as Britain's US ambassador is an attempt to muddy the waters before local elections. Sir Keir Starmer's labelled a vote tomorrow on a possible referral to a Commons Standards Committee as a political stunt. The Prime Minister denies misleading the House over the vetting of Peter Mandelson. David Lammy said it's clear what's going on.
What is the basis for this new inquiry by the Privileges Committee, other than a political, deliberate attempt to harness a committee onto this issue to muddy the waters before local elections? It's crystal clear to me what's happening, and I hope no Labour MP joins in this one.
And you can hear the full interview with the Deputy PM in Henry Riley's show from 10 tonight here on LBC. And it's thought there could be a resolution to the Birmingham bin strike. There's been a breakthrough in the long-running disputes over jobs and pay. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 47 points at 10,331. The pound buys $1.36 and €1.15. LBC weather showers into this evening for parts of England and Scotland. Some heavy downpours for London and the southeast. Turning dry tonight with lows of 5 to 11 degrees Celsius. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Katie Dartford.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale, live from Washington.
A very good evening to you. It's 9:03 on LBC here in Washington, D.C. with Simon Marks, and we're covering the royal visit. The King and Queen are on their way to the White House. We're looking at pictures now where there's a few people waiting to greet them. Simon, do you want to describe the scene?
Yeah, well, we're looking at the south portico of the White House, which is where they will be welcomed to Washington informally, because the formal events begin tomorrow, by the President of the United States and by the First Lady. There are a large number of seats that have been set up that are currently unoccupied. Whether those are going to be filled for this or whether they're there for tomorrow, I'm not certain. It could be a few minutes yet before the motorcade arrives, and the first sign of that we will get will be when the President and the First Lady come out of the door to the south portico to prepare to greet King Charles and Queen Camilla. After that greeting, they're going to be taken upstairs to the state floor of the White House, where they're going to sit for tea in the green room of the building, and then the King and Queen will join the President and the First Lady for a tour of the newly unveiled and expanded White House beehive. We'll have a chat about that a bit later on. Worth underscoring that all of the communications we've had from the White House about this visit tells us that the First Lady, Melania Trump, led the preparations for the state visit. The communications have been put out by the Office of the First Lady. Remember, of course, that the First Lady traditionally would have worked out of the East Wing, which in this case her husband demolished. But the Office of the First Lady still exists, and they've put out the communications from the White House saying First Lady Melania Trump led the preparations for the state visit, which will honour the long-standing and special relationship between the US and the UK. So the south portico, right beneath the famous Truman balcony of the White House, where I suspect we will see the King and Queen standing tomorrow alongside President Trump and the First Lady, but preparations definitely underway at the White House for their arrival, at some point over the course of the next few minutes.
And this, should we read anything into the fact that they're arriving here? Because normally when a head of state arrives, it's around the other side, isn't it?
Well, what's going to happen tomorrow, because tomorrow is when the state visit officially begins, that's when there will be the formal state arrival ceremony on the South Lawn. This is an informal greeting. Nothing more than a greeting. Come on in, have a cuppa, have a piece of cake or whatever they're going to be serving them. Let me show you my lovely beehive, and then you go off to the White House, to the British Embassy for your garden party.
Great chat-up line.
Come up and see my beehive, and we'll see you tomorrow.
It's not Melania's new hairstyle.
That would be a surprise.
Right, well, we're going to keep a close eye on this, and I hope that my instinct that they're not going to arrive within the next 3 minutes.
I think we're going to be okay.
True,
I think we'll be okay.
Because I want to play you a short part of an interview that my colleague Ben Kentish has, who's currently taking some time away from LBC for personal reasons. He's done an interview with David Lammy, the Deputy Prime Minister. Now, Henry Riley will be sitting in for Ben once again this evening, but earlier today, Ben did get to sit down with David Lammy for an exclusive LBC interview. So, as I say, you can hear the full interview after 10 o'clock tonight. But I just want to play you this part right now.
I just wanted to ask you two other quick questions. Firstly, about the special relationship. We had another act of political violence in the United States over the weekend. I know you're still in quite close contact with J.D. Vance, the Vice President, and you put a lot of time and effort as Foreign Secretary into building relationships with the Trump administration. I put it to you that the special relationship is now in a worse position than it's been in decades, quite probably, because of the sort of very public falling out between President Trump and our Prime Minister. Can it be repaired, do you think, with Keir Starmer still in Downing Street?
Well, first off, I've got to say that, I sent a message yesterday to the Vice President. We were in touch.
What did you say?
Well, of course, my full support and condemnation of the horrendous act of violence. There can never, ever, ever been room for violence, political violence of this kind. It undermines democracy, threatens democracy. Yes, of course we can disagree, but we disagree agreeably. And so, I sent him those words to him and his family, and he got back and said thanks and that everything was okay. He would have just been waking up as I sent those messages, I suspect, after the night before. Look, the truth is, if you go back in time, Winston Churchill had disagreements with Roosevelt on how to deal with Stalin in the Second World War. There were disagreements between Wilson and LBJ on Vietnam, and we stayed out of Vietnam. Bill Clinton and Tony Blair disagreed on how to approach the war in Bosnia. And Margaret Thatcher famously fell out with Ronald Reagan over the invasion of Grenada. Our special relationship is still intact because it's predicated on the closest of people-to-people relationships. We've got over 1 million people working in each other's economies.
It doesn't seem very close between the President and the Prime Minister.
A trillion pounds invested in each other's economies.
You've got a better relationship with the Trump administration than the Prime Minister.
We've got an intelligence relationship, a military relationship, and of course there's a relationship, a continuing relationship at all levels across the British state, as you would expect, notwithstanding the rhetoric that of course you hear from Donald Trump. I think we've all got used to Donald Trump's rhetoric.
It's disrespectful rhetoric, isn't it?
It's the way that the president chooses to express himself. That is a matter for him, not me.
But, do you not think ministers in this country should sort of push back against it a bit more when he's openly mocking and scorning our elected
The Prime Minister's been really clear. I've been really clear that this is an attempt to pressure us into a particular position, and we're not going to be pressured, and we're really clear about that.
That does make me laugh, doesn't it? When a politician says, we've been really clear about that, and then they say it 3 times in about 10 seconds, you know that they've been anything other than clear.
I mean, this claim that the special relationship is intact, as the Prime Minister has said, you can see the special relationship in operation, you can see it in practice. It's just so contradicted by the facts of the case. I mean, I was just noticing that the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson, has put a message out within the last half an hour on social media saying, earlier this year I had the true honour of speaking to the UK Parliament as the first US Speaker of the House to do so. As we celebrate 250 years of this great relationship, we look forward to welcoming His Majesty King Charles III to address a joint meeting of Congress this week, taking place tomorrow, of course. Our shared heritage with Great Britain creates a deep bond between our two kindred nations, and that bond remains essential to the defence of liberty. I mean, that's a pretty anodyne message, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, under normal circumstances, would be talking about the special relationship. But he knows, as we all know, that the special relationship simply was always overblown and definitely is not intact. It cannot be at a time when, at every possible turn, the President of the United States seeks to undermine publicly and denigrate the actions and views of a British Prime Minister. And this idea that, David Lammy is saying, well, the President of the United States will, express himself in the way that he chooses to do so, but that is an expression of his government's policy towards ours.
But there have been occasions, as you pointed out a moment ago, where you look at the Vietnam War, where Lyndon Johnson wanted Britain to participate in it. Harold Wilson refused. I think he then refused to come on a state visit to the UK, or was it the other way around? I can't remember. But there was a real froideur in the relationship. When the Americans invaded Grenada in 1983, Margaret Thatcher, to coin a phrase, went tonto.
Yes.
And was absolutely furious with Reagan and phoned him up in the middle of a cabinet meeting and let him have it in words of probably didn't have more than 4 letters. And he held the phone up to the cabinet meeting and sort of said to them, "Isn't she marvellous?" But that relationship went into the deep freeze for about 9 months after that.
And of course that was also partly fuelled by the experience that she'd had with him over the Falkland Islands that we were talking about the previous year. So there were already frustrations in the relationship. But what you didn't see was the public expression of fury and animus and antipathy that Donald Trump articulates, not on occasion, every single day towards our Prime Minister at a time when America's national security strategy, Donald Trump's official national security strategy, calls on the US government, says the US government finds optimism in what it refers to as patriotic European parties. And we've seen the direct intervention by Vice President J.D. Vance in Hungary's election on the side of Viktor Orban. We're going to see more and more and more of that. And rather than saying the special relationship is intact, one can argue that it would be more realistic to accept that there are huge challenges in the special relationship that may over time become insurmountable.
And I think one other difference is that I think public opinion in our in the United Kingdom is now of a mind that this state visit should not have happened. They are of a mind that we cannot support Donald Trump literally in anything that he does. That wasn't the case. I know it wasn't the case in the 1980s. Whether it was the case in the 1960s, I was only 5 years old, so I can't judge it. But I don't think there was this level of antipathy towards not just Donald Trump, but I think it's spilled over now, where people make assertions or assumptions about America and the American people as well as its president.
Look how far we have travelled in the months since the second unprecedented historic state visit, when the government clearly thought you throw the royal family at Donald Trump, you lavish a state visit to the UK on him for a second time, you tell him how unprecedented this is, you're going to buy him off. You're going to get so much favour as a result from that you're going to be home free. He hadn't even left British airspace on his way from Windsor. And we talked about this on the air at the time, and I said the second he's got the picture of him with the King, the picture of the two of them together at Windsor tucked into his breast pocket, and he clambers aboard Air Force One, he's going to revert to type. And that's exactly what happened. Yeah. And I'm the first to admit I've been wrong before, but on that occasion I think I was absolutely correct, and I think we're going to see exactly the same this week. He'll mostly behave himself. He'll definitely behave himself when he's with the King and Queen, and we'll be seeing those first images of them together within the course of the next few minutes. But once this visit is over, he will snap back to type because he's transactional and because he scents weakness in the water, he scents blood in the water, and that's what he sees in Keir Starmer's premiership.
Well, you mentioned all the times that you've been wrong. You'd better hope that the King and Queen arrive soon, because in the next 15 minutes of the programme, we might spend the whole 15 minutes talking about all the times
that I've been wrong.
Simon's been wrong. However, you like this one.
Yes.
Mark on Teesside says, you guys need to get, no, not a room, but an hour once a month and do this together as an Iain Dale US monthly update with Simon. 1 hour a month, that's all. It's been absolutely brilliant so far. You totally bounce off each other. And there's a thought. Top marks, no pun intended. Fingers crossed for the King and Queen's visit. Probably the most important for a very long time. OK, Mark, get your coat. You've pulled.
Once a month? Think of your frequent flyer miles. That'd be fantastic.
I don't think he was meaning...
Oh, he does mean you were coming back?
I don't think I could get past those in power to do that. Could I, Sophie? It's 16 minutes past 9.
This is LBC.
Close your eyes. Take a deep breath and come on in to Classic FM Calm, LBC's soothing sister station. Find peace in the music with Classic FM Calm. Listen on Global Player or ask your smart speaker to play Classic FM Calm.
At Ocado, you'll save 25% on your first shop and get free delivery, which means if you were to buy a 4-cheese pizza, you'd basically be getting one of the cheeses for free. Save and splurge at Ocado, the online supermarket.
Geographical and other restrictions. Min spend £60 and charges apply. Discount available on food, new customers only. Max saving £20. Terms at ocado.com.
Shine Night Walk London is a 10k, half marathon or full marathon supported walk around the city at night on the 19th of September to raise vital money for Cancer Research UK. It's also
everyone walking with all their colours, twinkling away. We can actually see how nice London is, and London is different at night time. Celebration of life, and it gives hope.
Step towards a brighter future at shinewalk.org today to get 30% off your entry. Together, we are beating cancer. T's and C's apply.
I'm Will Buxton.
I'm Naomi Schiff.
I'm David Coulthard.
And I'm Jolie Shaw.
This is Up to Speed. Available every Monday and Thursday on Global Player or wherever you get your podcasts.
Dan's in.
Jen's in.
Tom. Alice. Looks like everyone's on board.
Oh, and Jess.
Tell Jess to meet us at the train station an hour earlier, though. She's always late.
Make it happen with South Eastern Group Save. Save 1/3 on the price of train tickets when you travel at off-peak times in groups of 3 to 9 adults. Buy direct from our app or website with no booking fees. Terms and conditions apply. Find out more at southeasternrailway.co.uk/group save.
Southeastern.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
Well, the King and Queen have just stepped out of their armour-plated BMW and are greeting Melania Trump and the President Donald Trump outside the South Portico of the White House. All looks very jovial. They're about to pose for some pictures. Can't decide where they should go. The King standing next to the Queen, and he's got Donald Trump the other side. And here they are standing very upright for the pictures. Donald Trump whispering something to King Charles. I keep saying Prince. To King Charles. Habit of a lifetime. Wouldn't it be great if there was a microphone near enough to pick up what they were saying?
Yeah, very, very difficult to hear what they're saying. Melania Trump kissing the King on both cheeks. Warm welcome, as one would expect, by the First Lady and the President of the United States for King Charles and Queen Camilla, who of course landed at Andrews Air Force Base within the last hour or so, and were driven to the White House for this informal greeting. The President of the United States pointing out various aspects of the White House grounds to the King, who of course himself has visited the White House on many occasions in the past, but not as monarch. So now they're heading inside the building. President Trump escorting the King, Melania Trump and Queen Camilla behind them. They walk into the building, two Marines on either side of the doors of the South Portico, stiffly saluting. Various other officials now entering the building behind the President, the First Lady and their guests. They are going to be taken to the state floor of the White House, where in the first act of this sort of unofficial greeting at the start of the state visit, the official schedule begins tomorrow morning here in Washington with a separate arrival ceremony on the south lawn of the White House. But right now they're being taken to the green room of the White House on the state floor for tea, and then King Charles and Queen Camilla will join the President and the First Lady for a tour of the White House beehive, which is nestled on the south lawn near the White House kitchen garden. Those are the only aspects of this brief visit today to the White House that they're going to engage in. All the major ceremonial activities, the pipe and drum bands, the official greetings, the inspection of an honour guard and so on, that all takes place tomorrow morning here in Washington, D.C. And of course we'll be bringing you live coverage of all of that tomorrow on LBC throughout the day, culminating with the state dinner in the evening and the address that King Charles will be making to a joint session of Congress. But the King and Queen have arrived. They are in the White House now, the guests of Donald and Melania Trump, as this state visit gets underway.
Now, I want to put a new question to you in this hour. What would you ideally want the King to say to the President in these informal talks that he's having today? What do you want him to say in his speech tomorrow evening at the state dinner? What do you fear he might say might be another question to get our teeth into over the course of the next 40 minutes. 0345 6060 973. Now, Simon, how do you think the Queen and Melania will get on? I mean, they've obviously met each other beforehand, but I have to say, I'm not as an expert on Melania as you are, having
because I've seen the film
documentary, and I haven't.
That's the distinction between us.
But she, I think, can lay claim to be the best dressed woman in the whole world.
Well, I think that I wouldn't necessarily argue with that. She certainly brings a style and panache to the office of First Lady that we probably haven't seen for a good long while at the White House. I mean, look, let's be honest, the King and the Queen and the Trumps are not soulmates. They are not soulmates philosophically. They are not soulmates ideologically. They're not like us. They don't bounce off each other. The Queen, of course, has a love of books and of reading, and to some extent, I'm sure she will be interested in talking about literature to Melania Trump, and Melania Trump, of course, has published her own book as part of the presentation of this documentary that she made. I mean, the one thing I would say about that documentary, and Iain hasn't seen it, and if you haven't seen it at home, I think it's worth watching, because it is a very interesting insight. I mean, there's all sorts of issues with the film, but it's a very interesting insight into the things that she does care about and her desire to be seen seriously, to be taken seriously as a First Lady of the United States. I mean, the film begins, of course, with preparations for the inauguration. And for the first 20 minutes of the film, you think you're going to just sit there through, nearly 2 hours of a documentary that's going to be all about her clothes and what she's going to wear and all of that kind of stuff.
Which is why I haven't watched it.
But once you get past that, it gets substantially more interesting, and there are moments where she will walk into a room and influence the conversation that is taking place. I mean, she is still a mystery, I think, to most of us, and she's a mystery to the American people. She definitely has conservative viewpoints that on many occasions marry the viewpoints of her husband. There is a notable disagreement between them and between Melania Trump and orthodox Republican policy, particularly on the issue of abortion and a woman's right to choose. She definitely does not embrace the Republican conservative wing's desire to outlaw abortion to the greatest extent possible. But beyond that, she's definitely someone that, and this comes across in the film, she's definitely someone that he consults with. And, he credited during the first term her with being the person who said to him, if you run, it's been 2015, if you run in 2016, you are going to win. And there were not many people in the United States of America that were telling him that. And certainly during the first term, he would often credit her with it. And I think, we know that she's deeply concerned, as we were talking about earlier, about his security. I'm sure that conversation over this cup of tea is going to obviously dwell, briefly perhaps, on what took place here on Saturday, given that both of these couples are constantly in the public eye and will have their own particular perspectives on security arrangements that are offered to them. It's too easy to write her off as a bit of a cartoonish figure.
But what about their relationship? Because that's what, if somebody was to write a book about their relationship, I would read that, because I don't know what it is.
Well, the documentary suggests that it is closer than one might imagine. But of course,
in it?
Yes, he does.
So you see their body language.
You see some of their body language. Yeah, there is. I mean, there is more interaction than I actually thought we would see, and some of it certainly appears to be very genuine. Now, but of course, she's the executive producer of the documentary. Jeff Bezos spent $40 million and then another $35 million first producing the documentary and then promoting it, and of course buying himself considerable credibility in the Trump White House, which is presumably why Amazon decided to fund this particular project. Staggering amounts of money.
How can it cost that much?
Staggering amounts of money. Well, because one, I think, could question precisely what the nature of that payment was all about and whether it was all entirely designed to defray the normal expenses of producing a documentary film. But it is worth watching for those scenes, because everyone can watch them and make their own decisions about whether they think you're being sold a bill of goods in this documentary or whether there is some genuine relationship and attraction and fondness between them.
So what you're saying is I should give up my nightly episode of 24 to watch Melania's documentary before I get up at 4 o'clock to watch the Select Committee.
Yeah.
Select Committee.
I think it would tide you over while you were waiting for the Select Committee to.
I need to be fresh as a daisy for the programme tomorrow night, don't I? Because tomorrow night is the big night.
Yes,
that's when
the big night.
It could all go wrong or it could all go right.
And you are nothing if not fresh as a daisy.
I'm not sure I'm feeling it at the moment. Gordon says in Hampstead, I enjoyed the Melania film and she really knows fashion. She's a more substantial person than she is sometimes portrayed, I feel. I think that if that's the message that's come out of this, and I think it is from other reviews I've read of it, then it's succeeded from her point of view.
Not all reviewers would agree with Gordon, and I would agree with Gordon. Not all reviewers did agree with Gordon, and that's why I think you can hear me talk about the film, you can hear Gordon talk about the film, but it is worth, if you're interested in American politics, it is absolutely worth watching.
So basically,
because then you make your own mind up.
Gordon is disproving the lyric from that song, which you and I will remember, but maybe many of our listeners won't. In the 1980s, Gordon is a moron. He's the opposite, aren't you, Gordon?
Well, he's a wise and sagacious LBC listener.
Sagacious, and he's a very good texter. He texts in a lot.
Good man.
So thank you very much for that, Gordon. Right, we will be crossing live to the British Embassy in just a few moments' time, where I expect Joseph Draper, our reporter, to give us a full rundown of every single guest that's being invited. No, I don't really. I'm not that nasty. But he will have an idea of some of the Washington glitterati that are going to be attending. Basically, Simon and I aren't, because we're a little bit too important for that.
I hope he's going to bring us some sandwiches back. We're going to hear more about the sandwiches that they're serving at this thing in a moment as well. I suspect that Joseph hasn't got an invite either. Scaling the walls to try and get in. Right, let's get the news headlines on LBC. It's 9:30. Here is Katie Dartford.
The King and Queen have been welcomed to the White House by Donald and Melania Trump. The 4-day state visit marks the 250th anniversary of the US Declaration of Independence, and it's the first trip to the country by a British monarch in almost 2 decades. The visit's taken on greater prominence after Saturday's shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. The suspected gunman, 31-year-old Cole Allen, has been charged with the attempted assassination of President Trump and told he faces life in prison if convicted. And Sir Keir Starmer has urged Labour MPs to stand together against an attempt tomorrow to launch a parliamentary inquiry into claims he misled the Commons over the Peter Mandelson row. The Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy's exclusively told LBC he thinks the Conservatives are keen to keep the affair in the news to muddy the waters before local elections. LBC weather: showers into this evening for parts of England and Scotland, turning dry tonight, lows of 5 to 11 degrees.
This is LBC.
Oh, you want weight loss advice?
Weight loss? Actually, what you want to do...
I got my weight loss secret from my mother, who got it from her mother's
My tip
weight
is...
loss.
No, forget that. You just keep dancing.
Dragon fruit.
Podcast.
Advice.
Or you could go to MedExpress. MedExpress. Healthcare without the noise. Go to medexpress.co.uk/weight loss.
Ali 60mg hard capsules contain orlistat for overweight adults with a BMI of 28+. Follow a reduced calorie, low fat diet. Always read the label.
It's Munich, 1936, and all eyes are on the capital for the upcoming Olympic Games. As athletes fight for gold and the Nazis fight for power, Detective Sebastian Wolf faces a battle of his own in a search that will take him from high society to the city's darkest corners. Wolf is about to learn just how easily the hunter becomes the hunted. Evil in High Places is the gripping new historical thriller from the million-copy bestseller Rory Clements. Out now.
Your time is valuable. Your perspective should be too. The Economist cuts through the noise with the stories that truly shape your world.
How can you believe that a new regime won't crush you just like the previous one?
Online scams are stranger than they've ever been.
When the world's turned upside down, know which way is up. Read, watch, or listen to The Economist.
Calling all young creatives. Kickstart your career in media. Apply now and join us in years 10 or 12 at Global Academy. globalacademy.com.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
9:32 on LBC. We're live in Washington, D.C., covering the King's state visit. Simon Marks, our US correspondent, is with me. But before we go to the British Embassy, where Joseph Draper is waiting for us to tell us who the guests are, let's just watch this video, because the British Embassy in Washington has today posted this video on social media. And if you're not watching us on the Global Player, the LBC app, or the YouTube channel, you are going to miss out on something here, because this is apparently, Simon assures me, a very lovely little video. Anyway, they posted this video on social media about their preparations for this evening's garden party, including these culinary delights.
We will be preparing an afternoon tea for 650 people. We'll be making approximately 2,500 to 3,000 individual sandwiches. The calculation is based on experience and a little bit of luck. We're doing 4 types of sandwiches. So Scottish smoked salmon we're using, and we'll just do a very simple lemon butter, black pepper, brown bread, done. We're also doing a roast beef and horseradish sandwich. Now, I'm not normally traditionally involved in the afternoon tea flavors. However, we do have the first imports of British beef. which I'm more than happy to use for this special occasion. Bend the rules a little bit. Egg mayonnaise is classic, just nicely boiled eggs, a little bit of mayonnaise, black pepper and salt, and then the cucumber sandwich is one of the simplest ones. Now we do make it a little bit more interesting by pickling the cucumbers slightly, so the sweetness and acidity into the sandwich makes it a little bit more interesting. And traditionally, scones. So we'll bake the scones about an hour and a half before service, so nice, fresh and warm. Clotted cream, strawberry jam, and a nice strawberry on top. Done.
So there it is. That's how they're preparing the sandwiches, the scones, the clotted cream, scones. Sorry, clotted
Honestly.
cream, which is leaving
falling out, over the word
which is leaving me and Mr. Dale salivating. I have to say, it brought back memories for me, that video, because many years ago, my late father owned a sandwich bar on Villiers Street, underneath the arches in the centre of London. Yeah, it's still there. I mean, obviously, we have nothing to do with it. And,
I know exactly where you mean. And yeah, I might have met your father.
You might even, right next to heaven.
I did go there once.
Well, we don't have to get into that now.
Well, we could do if you like.
But those images in that video of thousands of sandwiches being buttered and filled was rather like my parents' house was every evening as sandwiches were prepared for the next day's sale. So it was flashback for me, but also interesting. They're going to serve some of that British beef, the first British beef that I think has come in as a result of the partial trade agreement that was inked by President Trump and Prime Minister Keir Starmer, with Peter Mandelson watching on in the Oval Office a few months back, and Scottish smoked salmon, which isn't always that easy to find here.
No, I'd have to say on Friday night in New York, I went to what's apparently quite a famous restaurant, Frankie and Johnny's.
Yes, I read about your dinner.
$380 for two.
Insane.
It was the biggest piece of steak I've ever had. I literally couldn't finish it.
Did you take a doggy bag?
No, I didn't, because I really hate people doing that. I think it's very common.
Really common?
Yes.
I was talking earlier about the AI video that was created falsely showing Kash Patel making off with 2 bottles of champagne from the dinner when it was cancelled on Saturday night. But there is legitimate video of other people, after they learn that the dinner's been scrubbed, grabbing the wine and grabbing the champagne off tables, reporters and others, and taking it home on their way out the door.
Journalistic ethics have gone to pot.
Absolutely terrible. Honestly. We'd never have done that.
Talking of journalists, and Melania Trump.
Well, we've got more on the. Don't we? What have we got? We're going to do the garden party. We're going to talk to Joseph.
Well, okay, aren't
we?
All right.
Go on then.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll do that then if you really want to, Simon.
Well, it came off the back of the sandwiches.
I'm getting delirious now. It's only 25 minutes
Fresh
to
as
go.
a daisy.
Joseph Draper is LBC's intrepid reporter. He's outside the British ambassador's residence in Washington, D.C., which has recently been renovated. And I know that because the reception that they threw for me had to be in the deputy ambassador's residence, which was actually rather fine as well, wasn't it, Simon?
Very nice.
So, Joseph, what's going on? Are people starting to arrive?
Yeah, we've had hundreds of guests filing in behind me. You'll be disappointed to hear I've not had any of the sandwiches. I've not had the smoked salmon or the British beef either. I've not had an invite inside, but I have seen many of the guests who have got one of those golden ticket invites. They've been filing in behind me. There'll be a garden party for the King and the Queen when they arrive in the next half an hour to an hour or so. And talk about Mission Impossible. I've managed to get hold of the names of some of the guests in attendance there. Some of the people I've spotted driving in their cars, surrounded by security. One of them is a former senior advisor to the 2012 Republican presidential candidate, Mitt Romney. Many of the country's top correspondents and news anchors as well. Perhaps most noticeably that I've spotted, though, Ian, Republican Senator Ted Cruz, of course, once presidential opponent of President Donald Trump as well. And interestingly, I even saw the Ukrainian ambassador Olga Stefanishna arriving by car earlier today. I mean, that's very interesting if she's here, given President Trump's ambivalence towards Ukraine in the past, his comments about some of his NATO allies. It'd be a very interesting statement, I think, by the King if she has had an invite here. But lots of excitement from the guests I've seen walking in behind me. I've been speaking to some of them, and this is what they've had to say.
I I believe so. I think that anytime individuals can talk to each other, face to face, and get a sense of each other, and I'm kind of
diplomacy as the greatest tool.
Yes, so I'm a big believer in soft power.
Look, I think this event's going to bring together both sides of the aisle in Washington. There's a lot of interest in the king. He obviously is a historic figure, someone who kind of rises above day-to-day partisan politics. I think we're excited to hear his message and reinforce the special relationship between our two countries.
Clearly, lots of the guests then hoping that this will help to heal that relationship, that special relationship between the British and the Americans. The big event, though, will of course be tomorrow when the King addresses Congress, marking the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And just finally from me, I mean, there's been a lot of concern about security on this trip, hasn't there? Especially given the assassination attempt against Donald Trump. I can tell you this whole area is completely crawling with Secret Service police directing traffic, keeping an eye on what's going on. So there really isn't a problem with security here. They're fully prepared for the King and Queen, who I'm sure will be here within the next hour.
So basically, you're not going to be able to sneak in, are you, because of the security?
No, that's completely foiled my plans to climb in through the back wall, climb over the back wall. So no sandwiches for me today, I don't think.
Well, better luck on Capitol Hill tomorrow, Joseph. Thank you very much indeed. It was interesting that he mentioned the increased security there. I mean, I don't know what we've got to compare it against.
Well, and also just worth making the point that the British Embassy, which is this very significant compound at the top of Massachusetts Avenue, is right next to the Naval Observatory, which of course is the home of Vice President J.D. Vance and the Second Lady. So there's often quite a bit of security in the neighbourhood, but I am absolutely sure, as Joseph was reporting there, that in the aftermath of Saturday's events, it will have been beefed up substantially. One of the other aspects of the British Embassy that's just worth pointing out for those people that have never seen it is that right outside it there is a statue, glorious statue of Winston Churchill waving. And on the other side of the street is the South African Embassy. And a few years ago they put a statue of Nelson Mandela outside the South African statue, saluting back to Winston Churchill on the other side of the street. It's a lovely little juxtaposition.
Now, talking of the aftermath of Saturday, Melania Trump is incandescent over comments that the talk show host Jimmy Kimmel has made. And of course, there is some beef there before this, isn't there?
Yeah, and now not only Melania Trump, but her husband as well. So the First Lady took tremendous exception at a joke that Jimmy Kimmel told on his programme last week, before the events of Saturday night. I think the exception was really taken after the events of Saturday night, but and we've got an opportunity to hear what Jimmy Kimmel said on his programme last Thursday that has now become an issue that both the First Lady and the President have ignited. Let's take a listen.
And of course, our First Lady Melania is here. Look at Melania, so beautiful. Mrs. Trump, you have a glow like an expectant widow. You know, Melania's birthday is on Sunday. That's right. She's planning to celebrate at home the same way she always does, looking out a window and whispering, "What have I done?" As you're all aware, Melania is a movie star now. Her documentary had a score of 10% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is a website named after her husband's testicles. And I want to congratulate you, Madam First Lady, on your huge accomplishment, the world's first motionless picture. And that... Oh, by the way, before we go any further, Melania, this is Donald. Donald, this is Melania. That was my impression of Jeffrey Epstein.
So, I mean, an excoriating appearance there by Jimmy Kimmel. And for those of you who can't see it, I mean, televisually, they had created images of Melania Trump, the Trump son Barron, and then at the end there, President Trump, to make it look like they were in the studio when, of course, they were not. Well, after the events of Saturday, you know, that comment that Melania looked like an expectant widow, you have the glow of an expectant widow. The First Lady called for Jimmy Kimmel to be taken off air. His monologue about my family isn't comedy, she said. His words are corrosive and deepens the political sickness within America. How many times will ABC's leadership enable Kimmel's atrocious behaviour at the expense of our community, she asked. Remember that Jimmy Kimmel had already blotted his copybook with the President of the United States, and under enormous pressure from the head of the Federal Communications Commission, Brendan Carr, ABC took Jimmy Kimmel off air and announced they were dropping the show. Indeed, people showed up at the studios to remove the furniture from the studio, and then growing protests and time passed and Jimmy Kimmel found himself being back on the air. Well, now President Trump, within the last few hours, has himself taken to social media to say Jimmy Kimmel, who is in no way funny as attested to by his terrible ratings, made a statement on his show that is really shocking. He says he showed a fake video of the First Lady and our son Barron like they were actually sitting in his studio listening to him speak, which they weren't and never would be. He then repeats the effort to suggest that Mrs. Trump is an expectant widow. A day later, it's actually 2 days later, a lunatic, writes President Trump, tried entering the ballroom of the White House Correspondents' Dinner, loaded up with a shotgun, handgun and many knives. He was there for a very obvious and sinister reason. I appreciate, writes the President, that so many people are incensed by Kimmel's despicable call to violence and normally would not be responsive to anything he said, but this is something far beyond the pale. Jimmy Kimmel should be immediately fired by Disney and ABC. So that is the President essentially giving an instruction over his social media platform to the FCC chair, Brendan Carr, to get on the phone to ABC and tell them that if they don't want a threat to their broadcast licenses, they need to get Jimmy Kimmel off the air yet again. Not entirely clear that Jimmy Kimmel, I mean, he talks there about Jimmy Kimmel's, inciting violence. I mean, I suppose, you could view those comments that way, but equally, this is reflective of where this country is now as a society, and this hate speech that exists on both sides of the aisle. This is a president who said that Saturday's event was all about protecting the First Amendment to the American Constitution that guarantees freedom of speech, and yet here he is tonight calling for ABC to fire Jimmy Kimmel. It's redolent of tremendous confusion about all of these issues. I
completely understand that Donald Trump and his wife would have been incensed by those remarks from Jimmy Kimmel. But that's what topical comedians do. They are there to make those kind of jokes. And if you just look at them as jokes, they are quite funny. If you look at them from the personal point of view of the Trumps, they're not funny at all. I completely get that. But you cannot have a system of media where the president could effectively get media people fired or indeed threaten their licenses. And that's effectively what Donald Trump has done in that statement. Sometimes you just have to rise above it. Think of all of the... back in the 1980s, Ben Elton and his monologues about Margaret Thatcher.
Spitting image.
Indeed, equally distasteful towards her. Did she ever complain? No. And I'm afraid it diminishes not just Donald Trump, but the office of the presidency when he makes these kind of remarks. End of sermon. It's 9:47.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Henry Riley.
As King Charles and Queen Camilla touch down in the US for the state visits, what would success look like? Plus, is it hypocritical for a Green MP to bemoan drinking in Parliament when they want to legalise drugs?
Henry Riley at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Experience. It's knowing when something is worth waiting for and when it isn't. That's why Saga Health Insurance offers unlimited GP appointments whenever you need them. With a choice of flexible plans, prompt tests and treatment, your health is taken care of. And right now, you'll get a £250 gift card when you take out Saga Health Insurance. Search Saga Health Insurance for a quote today. Start a new policy before the 28th of May. New customers over 50 only. Terms and conditions apply.
Next.
Hi, just these, thanks. Do you do cashback?
just need to check you're not a robot first. New security policy.
Okay.
How many traffic lights can you see out the window?
Oh, 2?
No, that's wrong.
Right, well, obviously I'm not a robot.
That's what a robot would say.
What a load of malarkey. Smarty keeps things simple, like 80 gigabytes for £10, and on a rolling monthly SIM plan, you're free to leave any time. Less malarkey, more Smarty. Search Smarty Mobile.
When it comes to retirement advice, the last thing you want is to be put in a bucket. Seen as this type of person, or that type of person. At Fisher Investments UK, we never put you in a bucket. We always tailor retirement advice that's just right for you. Fisher Investments UK. Retirement advice that's as individual as you are. Learn more at fisherinvestments.co.uk. Investing involves the risk of loss. Fisher Investments UK is regulated by the UK Financial Conduct Authority.
Tackles that crunch and theatrical diving, rivals on terraces sobbing and crying, last minute winners that change everything. These are a few of our favourite things. When you're singing, yet not winning, when your bet's gone bad, we simply remember our favourite things and then we'll feel so glad.
For all your favourite things, visit BetVictor. 18+ gambleaware.org. Please gamble responsibly.
Iain Dale on LBC.
9:49 on LBC. A thought occurs to me on the Jimmy Kimmel thing. What on earth possessed him? I mean, it's after what he nearly lost his job. Why would you go out on a limb and make comments like that only, a matter of months afterwards?
Yeah, and just to remind everybody of what Jimmy Kimmel's first transgression was, it was right after the Charlie Kirk assassination when he advanced the argument that supporters of Donald Trump's Make America Great Again movement were trying to score political points off the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I mean, to be fair, Jimmy Kimmel also, at the beginning of that monologue, expressed condolences to the widow of Charlie Kirk and to Charlie Kirk's many admirers in the United States. But nonetheless, those comments about scoring political points by MAGA supporters was enough to get him taken off air the first time around. He has obviously been walking on very thin ice ever since then. But, you know, coming at the end of a weekend that was supposed to be celebrating the First Amendment and freedom of speech, and the president himself stipulating to that on Saturday night when he got back to the White House in his press briefing to the assembled reporters, many of them still dressed in their ball gowns and their tuxedos. And he said he had, thought it was very important for the First Amendment to be celebrated. And here we are 48 hours later, and he's calling for the firing of a top network television star, echoing calls that have been advanced by the First Lady Melania Trump. And that pressure for ABC is going to be difficult to resist, not least because ABC will be influenced by the large groups of local commercial television stations here that it doesn't own. And we may see what we saw the first time around with some of those groups saying they are dropping Jimmy Kimmel's show. And if Mr. Kimmel's show is not on in substantial parts of the country, that will again send a message to ABC that maybe the future of that programme is going to be in doubt.
Right, let's finish off the show with a couple of calls, shall we?
Absolutely.
Let's go to Emily in Chester. Hello, Emily.
Hello, how are you and Simon?
We are dreadfully well. What would you like to tell us?
Yeah,
Emily?
I'm sorry that Joseph couldn't get into that thing because he could have smuggled you out some scones and the salmon. I brought it to you.
I was looking forward to the clotted cream.
Oh, I forgot the clotted cream as well, yeah. Well, that as well.
Can't forget that, Emily.
Yeah, first of all, I want to echo the fellow before that you and Simon are doing so great together. They need to hook you up for two hours a month.
2 hours a month. We're up to 2 hours a month. Now, would that be two separate hours, Emily?
You need to do a joint
or a continuous 2 hours?
Basically,
I'm a
what you're saying is, Emily, you want Simon to take over my programme, which he actually will be doing for 2 weeks in June.
I will be for a couple of weeks in June, yeah, but I'll just be keeping the seat warm. I'm merely a seat warmer, Emily.
Anyway, Emily, why did you phone in?
Well, I'm a dual national, and I voted for Trump 3 times. Simon, don't hold that against me, please, because I know you're not.
No. You're exercising your democratic right, Emily.
I don't agree with everything I do. I do believe that, there are moments he appears to have gone, totally off his rocker, shall we say. But I think that the Queen and the King had to make this trip, because if they'd have cancelled it, he'd have been social media 4 o'clock in the morning. What would he have been posting? The King is a diplomat. I think he'll do really well. I do like the Queen, and I think they'll do very well, but I do think they have to go. And I don't think, like some of these people are saying, Charles should, tell him straight and all that sort of thing. That's just not what the King's supposed to do, because then he's actually getting political, isn't he? He's taking a political thing, and then that would
I agree with that entirely, Emily. I agree entirely that I think that we will see the King doing what the King does, which is absolutely engage in his ceremonial role as the head of state. He's not going to walk into the White House wagging his finger. I'm sure he's not sitting there over tea wagging his finger and berating his host, President Donald Trump. And I think there is no question that the cost of cancellation of this visit, as much as a substantial number of people back in the UK favour cancellation of this visit, the cost of that would have been incalculable. There would have been no turning back for the bilateral relationship, because the Trumps, plural, would have just taken such umbrage and would have felt so insulted that once you'd kind of manoeuvred yourself into a situation where you had agreed that the King and Queen were going to come here, at that point it didn't really matter what happened. It didn't matter how bad things got. You had to go forward with the visit. But you also have to be realistic, I think, as it sounds like you are, about the prospects of this visit succeeding in changing the trajectory of the relationship between Donald Trump and Sir Keir Starmer. It just cannot do that. That is setting far too high a bar. There are other things the King can do, advance the trade agenda in talks that he's going to have with corporate leaders up in New York later in the week. There are other areas that can be addressed and that can be worked upon, but the notion that you can transform that relationship, I think, Iain, is just completely impossible over a 4-day period.
OK, Emily, thank you very much indeed for that. Now, I think we can go to Munesh in Southall. Is he there? Munesh, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Marvellous. What would you like to say?
Hi. I would like to say, as you mentioned, David Lammy's interview, do you think it would be a nice icebreaker for King Charles to ask the question to Donald Trump if he actually believes that Henry VII was a successor to Henry VIII, as was asked on the Mastermind to David Lammy?
I'm not sure Donald Trump would actually get the illusion, if I'm honest.
He may get it if suddenly King Charles was to ask for a second portion of chicken.
So what do you think the conversation will be happening right now between Charles and Donald Trump? Do you think it will all be fairly amicable, or do you think that each of them will have a point to make?
I think it will be amicable, because they both have mutual respect for each other and understand they need each other to go forward in a progressive way. So they'll understand their standings and where they're coming from, and where the active point of control is, of what the major points are involved with. You can neglect all the minor deficiencies here and there and the minor discrepancies. The major points should be the most important and vital, that need to be satisfied in order for us to continue this special so-called relationship. And, it's a case of, like, he has had special treatment, to have the second visit here at Buckingham Palace and whatever you. He's a very person that's very lucky to have that. No one else has had that benefit. So he should count his lucky stars that King Charles is coming to visit there, and he should give him the ultimate respect, I believe.
Munesh, thank you very much indeed. Well, we've really nearly reached the end of the show, Simon. What are your closing remarks?
Well, we should make the point that there are major issues that are hanging in the background over this visit, and one of them, of course, is the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. The King and Queen have arrived in Washington just hours after President Trump gave that extraordinary interview to 60 Minutes. I am not a rapist. I am not a paedophile. The most extraordinary comments we've ever heard an American president in the modern era make in a television interview. And when the King goes to Congress tomorrow and makes that joint address to Congress, which you'll be hearing live here on LBC, he will be aware that there are many lawmakers in that chamber who believe that his brother, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, should be cooperating with the House Oversight Committee inquiry into the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. So we will talk about that more on the programme tomorrow, because it is definitely hanging in the tapestry behind all of this.
Simon, we'll do it all again tomorrow.
We will.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for your calls. Admittedly, we haven't taken many of them this evening, but you can understand why in a rolling news story. I'll be back tomorrow from 7, coming to you live from Washington, D.C. once again, when King Charles will be addressing the US Congress from 8 o'clock UK time tomorrow evening. Coming up at 1... No. Sorry, I can't. I knew there'd be one mistake in the programme, and I've left it to the last minute.
Yeah, you're rolling.
Coming up at 1 LBC, it's James Max. But right now, in for Ben Kentish, here's Henry Riley.
Thank you very much, Ian. Thank you, Simon. Good evening at 10 o'clock.
He's a great guy. They called and they are so looking forward to hear. We spoke this morning.
As King Charles and Queen Camilla touch down in the US ahead of a 4-day state visit, what would success look like? This, as Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy tells LBC.
Yes, of course we can disagree, but we disagree agreeably. Our special relationship is still intact.
But is the special relationship